The gunshot tore through the woo-ho calm of Crescent Bistro like a blade through silk. Glass exploded across marble floors. A woman's scream cut short. Bodies scattered, chairs toppling, wine glasses shattering into crimson pools that merged with something darker, something warm. In the center of the chaos, a man in a faded gray t-shirt collapsed face first, his skull cracking against the floor with a sound that silenced everything else. Blood spread beneath him in a widening halo, thick and dark, pooling around the pressed white tablecloths that had fallen with him. The gunmen, masked, shaking, bolted through the shattered entrance. But the real story wasn't the shooter. It was the young woman in scrubs who dropped to her knees in that spreading blood, her hands already moving, already red, while everyone else stood frozen with their phones raised. 24 hours later, 200 soldiers in full dress uniform would stand outside her apartment door. But first, they would try to stop her from saving his life. If you want to see how a woman the world tried to silence became the one they couldn't ignore, stay with me until the very end. Like this story, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far the truth can travel. The lunch rush at Crescent Bistro had been unremarkable until it wasn't. Maya Torres had chosen the corner booth specifically because it faced away from the noise, away from the clusters of businessmen, and the table of college students celebrating something with too much laughter. She'd ordered the soup, something with tomatoes and basil she couldn't pronounce, and was reading incident reports on her phone when the first shout erupted near the entrance. She looked up just as the gun fired. The sound wasn't like the movies. It was sharper, flatter, a crack that punched the air from the room and left ears ringing in its wake. The man had been standing near the hostess station, arguing with someone in a black jacket. Then the jacket was running, and the man was falling, and Maya's training kicked in before her conscious mind caught up. She was on her feet, moving through the screaming crowd, her shoulder bag hitting the floor somewhere behind her. People were scrambling toward the exits, trampling over fallen purses and shattered plates. A waiter stood paralyzed behind the bar, his hands over his mouth. The hostess was sobbing into her phone, words incoherent. Maya dropped to her knees beside the man. He was face down, one arm twisted beneath him, the other stretched out as if reaching for something he'd never touch. Blood was already soaking through his shirt, spreading across his shoulder blades in a pattern Maya recognized instantly. Entry wound, right side, probably punctured lung. She grabbed his shoulder and rolled him onto his back, her hands finding his neck, checking for a pulse. Thready, rapid, weakening. "Sir, can you hear me?" Her voice cut through the chaos, sharp and clear. No response. His eyes were half open, pupils dilated, skin already graying. She pressed her palm against the wound on his chest, felt the hot rush of blood between her fingers. Through and through, exit wound in the back, possible pneumothorax. "Someone call 911, she shouted without looking up. "They're coming," a voice answered, distant, useless. Maya's other hand went to his airway, tilting his head back, checking his breathing. Shallow, labored, bubbling. Definitely a lung. She needed to seal the wound, needed pressure, needed equipment she didn't have. "I need clean cloth, napkins, tablecloths, anything." She was already pulling off her cardigan, wadding it against the entry wound. Blood soaked through immediately, warm and sticky. She pressed harder. That's when the manager appeared. "Ma'am, you need to step back." He was a thin man in a navy suit, his face pale, but his voice carrying the automatic authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Step away from him. Now." Maya didn't look at him. "He's been shot. He's losing blood. I'm a nurse. I don't care what you are. You need to get me clean linens. Now." Her hands didn't stop moving, applying pressure, checking his carotid again. Pulse still there, barely. Breathing worse. The manager's hand landed on her shoulder. "Miss, I'm telling you to step back." "You're not a doctor. You don't have authorization to—" "Authorization?" Maya's head snapped up, eyes blazing. "He's dying. I have combat trauma certification. Move." But the manager was already gesturing to someone else, a thick-necked security guard who approached from the side. "Sir, we can't have unlicensed personnel. I'm licensed. I work at Riverside Memorial. Now get your hand off me and bring me something to work with." The man on the floor gasped, a wet, rattling sound that made Maya's stomach clench. She could hear the air escaping from his chest with each attempted breath. Definitely a punctured lung, possibly a hemothorax filling with blood. She needed to relieve the pressure before his chest cavity filled completely. "He's coding," she said, more to herself than anyone else. She shifted position, checking his breathing again, barely moving air. His lips were turning blue. The manager was talking to someone on his phone now, his voice low and urgent. "I don't know. She says she's a nurse, but she could be anyone. Yes, there's blood everywhere. No, the ambulance isn't here yet." Maya tuned him out. The man's pulse was weakening under her fingers. She made a split-second decision and repositioned her hands for compressions, but his chest was still moving, badly, but moving. Not cardiac arrest yet. If she could just stabilize him until the paramedics arrived. "Ma'am," the security guard's voice was closer now. "I need you to come with me." "I'm not going anywhere." "This is a crime scene. You're contaminating." "I'm saving his life." The words came out louder than she intended, sharp enough to cut through the remaining noise in the restaurant. A few of the lingering customers turned to stare, their phones still raised, recording everything. The guard's hand closed around her upper arm. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to—" Maya jerked away, her hands never leaving the wounded man's chest. "Touch me again, and I'll have you charged with interfering with medical care." "You're not a doctor." The manager again, his phone still pressed to his ear. "You're just a nurse. You don't have the authority to—" The man on the floor convulsed, his back arching, blood bubbling from his lips. Maya swore under her breath and shifted again, turning him onto his side to keep him from aspirating, her cardigan now completely soaked through. She could feel his ribs beneath her hands, feel the unnatural movement of his chest wall. "Someone bring me a pen, any pen with a hollow barrel!" She was shouting now, not caring who heard. If he was developing tension pneumothorax, she might need to decompress his chest cavity before his heart stopped entirely. A woman in a business suit stepped forward, holding out a cheap ballpoint. Maya grabbed it, her mind already running through the procedure she'd performed twice in field conditions, never in a restaurant in Ashford City. She'd need to find the right intercostal space, puncture cleanly. The security guard grabbed her shoulder with both hands this time, trying to pull her backward. "Ma'am, I'm not asking—" Maya's elbow shot back reflexively, catching him in the ribs. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to make him stagger. She didn't even look at him. Her fingers were finding the landmarks on the wounded man's chest, counting ribs, finding the second intercostal space. "You just assaulted my security officer," the manager's voice pitched higher. "Someone get her out of here." But Maya was past listening. The man's breathing had stopped. His chest wasn't moving. She dropped the pen and started compressions, her hands positioned over his sternum, her weight driving down in the rhythm she'd practiced 10,000 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. "He's coding," she said again, louder this time. "Someone with medical training, get over here." No one moved. The crowd had thinned to a handful of people pressed against the far walls, filming, watching, doing nothing. The manager was still on his phone. The security guard was radiating anger from 6 feet away. 50, 16, 17, 18. Maya could feel the resistance in his chest, the ribs flexing under her palms. She was maintaining circulation, keeping blood moving to his brain, buying time. But without proper equipment, without backup, she was fighting a losing battle. Somewhere in the distance, sirens began to wail. 28, 29, 30. She leaned down, sealed her mouth over his, and delivered 2 breaths. His chest barely rose. Blood coated her lips, metallic and warm. She didn't care. Back to compressions. "The police are coming," the manager said, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. "They'll sort this out." Maya didn't waste breath responding. 1, 2, 3. She could feel her arms starting to burn, her shoulders screaming, but she didn't slow down. This man, whoever he was not going to die on a restaurant floor because people were more worried about liability than life. 8, 9, 10. The security guard had been joined by another man in uniform, both of them standing a careful distance away. "Should we pull her off?" one of them asked. "Wait for the police," the manager answered. "Let them handle it." 15, 16, 17. Maya's vision narrowed to the man beneath her hands. She could see the veins in his neck now, distended, a sign of pressure building in his chest. If the paramedics didn't arrive in the next 2 minutes, she was going to have to decompress him right here with whatever tools she could improvise. A needle, a straw, anything to relieve the pressure crushing his heart and lungs. 25, 26. The sirens were louder now, multiple vehicles from the sound of it. She delivered 2 more breaths and went back to compressions, her hair falling into her face, sweat mixing with blood on her forearms. That's when she felt it, the faintest flutter beneath her fingers. A pulse. Weak, irregular, but there. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on, stay with me." His chest hitched, a tiny movement, then another. Spontaneous breathing, barely adequate but present. Maya sat back on her heels, keeping one hand on his carotid, feeling that threadbare pulse persist. She'd bought him time. Maybe enough. The restaurant doors burst open and paramedics flooded in, 2 teams with equipment bags and a stretcher. Maya started talking before they even reached her, her voice clinical and precise. "Gunshot wound to the right chest, through and through. Probable hemopneumothorax. He coded approximately 90 seconds ago. Spontaneous circulation returned following 30 seconds of CPR. Pulse is weak and thready, breathing inadequate. He needs immediate decompression and transport." The lead paramedic, a woman in her 40s with gray streaks in her hair, nodded once and dropped to the floor beside Maya. "Good work. We've got him now." Maya started to move back, but the paramedic's partner, a younger man with close-cropped hair, was already looking at her with something like recognition. "Wait, you're Maya Torres, from Riverside Memorial." She blinked, surprised. "Yeah. Thought I recognized you. You worked the mass casualty drill last spring." He was setting up an IV line, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. "This is exactly like your field scenario." Because it was her field scenario. Because before nursing school, before Riverside Memorial, before Ashford City, Maya had spent 3 years in places where gunshot wounds were daily occurrences, and the closest hospital was a helicopter ride away. She'd learned to work with nothing, to make life or death decisions in seconds, to keep moving when everyone else froze. She'd just never told anyone at Riverside about that part of her history. It hadn't seemed relevant. The manager appeared at her elbow as the paramedics worked. "I'm going to need your information. The police will want to speak with you." Maya stood slowly, her knees protesting. Her scrubs were soaked with blood from mid-thigh down. Her hands were crimson to the wrists. She could taste copper on her lips. "My information? You assaulted my security officer. You ignored direct orders from management. I saved that man's life." Maya's voice was quiet, but something in it made the manager step back. "While your staff stood around filming and your security tried to pull me off him. You're not a doctor. You had no right to—" "I had every right." She was too tired for this argument, too drained to feel the anger she knew would come later. "I'm a registered nurse with trauma certification. I'm legally obligated to provide care in an emergency situation. If I'd walked away, I could have lost my license." The manager's face reddened. "We'll see what the police say about that." The police, as it turned out, said very little. They took Maya's statement, checked her credentials, reviewed the security footage, and told her she was free to go. The restaurant's cameras had captured everything: the shooting, her immediate response, the manager and security guard trying to remove her while she worked, the man's heart stopping and starting again under her hands. One of the officers, a woman with sergeant's stripes, pulled Maya aside before she left. "That was good work in there, quick thinking." Maya nodded, suddenly exhausted beyond words. "Is he going to make it?" "They're taking him to Ashford General. Trauma team's waiting." The sergeant hesitated. "The paramedics said you gave him just enough time. Another minute or two." And she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Maya walked out of Crescent Bistro into the bright afternoon sun, her hands still tacky with dried blood, her scrubs ruined, her cardigan left behind in an evidence bag. Her phone had 17 missed calls and twice that many texts. The news had already broken. Nurse saves shooting victim despite restaurant staff interference was trending on 3 different platforms. She ignored all of it and drove home in silence. Her apartment was a modest 1-bedroom in the Riverside district, close enough to the hospital that she could walk to work on good days. She lived alone, had lived alone since moving to Ashford City 2 years ago. No family nearby. No partner. No one to come home to except a spider plant that was somehow still alive despite her best efforts at neglect. She stripped off her scrubs in the bathroom, dropping them directly into the trash. The blood had soaked through to her skin in places, leaving rust-colored stains she had to scrub away with a washcloth. She stood under the shower for 20 minutes, watching pink water spiral down the drain, trying to stop her hands from shaking. They didn't stop. It wasn't fear. Maya had worked enough traumas to be intimate with fear, and this wasn't it. This was the aftermath, the adrenaline crash, the body's delayed response to crisis. She'd be fine in an hour. She always was. She dressed in soft clothes, leggings, and an oversized sweater, and made tea she didn't drink, sat on her couch and stared at the wall. Tried not to think about the man's face, the way his eyes had been half open and unseen, the way his pulse had disappeared beneath her fingers, and then, impossibly, returned. Tried not to think about the manager's words. "You're just a nurse." Her phone buzzed. A text from her supervisor at Riverside Memorial. "Saw the news. Are you okay? Take tomorrow off if you need it." Another text. This one from a coworker. "Holy shit, Maya, you're famous." And another. "That restaurant is getting destroyed online." Did you really hit their security guard? Maya set the phone face down on the coffee table and closed her eyes. She'd done this before, not in a restaurant, not in Ashford City, but in places where the stakes were higher and the resources even more limited. She'd kept soldiers alive with nothing but pressure and prayer, had talked men through their own deaths when there was no saving them, had learned to make impossible decisions in impossible situations. That training never left you. It lived in your hands, in your muscle memory, in the part of your brain that knew how to count compressions even when conscious thought had fled. It was why she'd moved without thinking when the gun fired, why she'd dropped to the floor while everyone else scattered. It was also why she'd never mentioned it at Riverside Memorial. That part of her life, the deployment, the field hospitals, the things she'd seen and done, belonged to a different person. The Maya Torres who worked in a quiet medical center in a quiet city didn't need that history. She'd left it behind deliberately, carefully, like setting down a weight she'd carried too long. Except it hadn't stayed behind. It never did. The evening news played across her phone in autoplay videos she didn't ask for. Local nurse defies restaurant management to save shooting victim. Viral video shows nurse performing CPR while security tries to remove her. Crescent Bistro under fire after staff attempts to stop medical care. The comments were worse. Hundreds of them. Thousands. People who'd been nowhere near the scene offering opinions on what she should or shouldn't have done. Some praised her. Others questioned her credentials. A few suggested she'd been showboating for attention. Maya deleted the app. Sleep didn't come easily that night. When it did, it brought dreams of blood and shouting, of hands trying to pull her away while someone died beneath her, of running towards something she could never quite reach. She woke at 3 a.m, heart pounding, and gave up on rest. She made coffee and sat at her kitchen table, watching the city lights through her window. Ashford City at night was peaceful, almost gentle. Nothing like the places she'd been, the places she'd learned what people were capable of when pushed far enough. Her phone lit up with a new notification. An email from Riverside Memorial's HR department marked urgent. Please contact us at your earliest convenience regarding yesterday's incident. Maya's stomach tightened. She'd saved a man's life, and now she was being called into HR. Of course she was. The sun rose slowly over Ashford City, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Maya showered again, dressed in clean scrubs, and made herself eat something that tasted like cardboard. She had a shift starting at noon, but the HR email suggested she come in early for a brief conversation. Nothing good ever came from brief conversations with HR. She arrived at Riverside Memorial at 10, 2 hours before her shift. The hospital was a sprawling complex on the north side of the city, modern and efficient, all glass and steel and sanitized surfaces. She'd worked here for 18 months, first in general medicine, then in the emergency department. Good job, good colleagues, steady, predictable work. She'd never made waves, never drawn attention, never given them reason to look too closely at her background. The HR office was on the 3rd floor, tucked behind administration. The woman waiting for her was someone Maya had met once during orientation. Patricia something, middle-aged and professional, with the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. Maya, thank you for coming in. Patricia gestured to a chair. I hope you're feeling okay after yesterday's incident. Maya sat. I'm fine. Good, good. We just wanted to touch base, make sure everything was handled appropriately. Patricia opened a folder on her desk. We've been receiving calls about it, media requests, questions about your employment here. I gave a statement to the police. I'm not speaking to media. Of course, and we support that decision. Patricia's smile tightened slightly. However, there are some concerns about how the situation was handled, specifically your decision to intervene in a violent crime scene without proper authorization or backup. Maya felt something cold settle in her chest. A man was dying. I'm a licensed nurse. I had both the authorization and the obligation to help. Certainly, and no one is questioning your intentions, but there are protocols, Maya, procedures. In a situation like that, the appropriate response is to call for professional help and wait for, he would have died. You don't know that. Yes, Maya said quietly. I do. Patricia studied her for a long moment. The hospital has to consider liability. If something had gone wrong, if your intervention had caused harm rather than prevented it, Riverside Memorial would have been exposed to significant legal risk. Nothing went wrong. I stabilized him until the paramedics arrived. I did everything by the book. Whose book? Patricia's voice sharpened slightly. You're an emergency department nurse, Maya. You're not a trauma surgeon. You're not a paramedic. And according to your file, you have no special training in field medicine or combat care. There it was. The edge of the cliff Maya had been walking toward since yesterday. She could step back now, agree, apologize, promise to defer to authorities in the future. She could keep her head down and her history buried and go back to being just another nurse in just another hospital. Or she could tell the truth. I was a combat medic, Maya said. 3 years, multiple deployments. I have more experience with traumatic injuries than most of the doctors in this hospital. Patricia's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. That's not in your file. I didn't include it on my resume. I wanted to leave that part of my life behind. I see. Patricia made a note on her pad. And you didn't think that was relevant information for your employer to have? Maya's hands tightened on the arms of her chair. I didn't think it would matter. I'm a good nurse. My record here is spotless. I show up, I do my job, I don't cause problems. Until yesterday. Yesterday wasn't a problem. Yesterday was me doing exactly what I was trained to do. Patricia closed her folder. Maya, I'm going to be frank with you. The hospital appreciates your dedication, and we're grateful the victim survived. But this kind of publicity, this kind of controversy, it's not what Riverside Memorial needs right now. We're a quiet facility. We serve a quiet community. We can't have staff members getting into altercations with security guards or making headlines every other day. I didn't get into an altercation. I defended myself when someone tried to forcibly remove me from a dying patient. That's not how it looked on the video. Maya stood slowly. Are you firing me? No, nothing like that. Patricia stood as well, her smile back in place. We're just suggesting you take a few days. Let things calm down. Come back next week and we'll reassess. Reassess what? Your position here. Whether the ED is the right fit for someone with your particular skill set. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to point out the hypocrisy, the cowardice, the way they were punishing her for saving a life. But she was tired, and the cold thing in her chest had spread to her limbs, and she knew how this would end. She'd been here before. Different hospital, different city, different excuse. But the pattern was always the same. Do something exceptional, something that draws attention, and watch them shuffle you sideways or out entirely. Tall poppies get cut down. I'll take the week, she said finally. You know where to reach me. She walked out of Riverside Memorial into another bright morning, her jaw tight, her eyes dry. She didn't cry. Hadn't cried since her second deployment, when she'd learned that tears were a luxury no one could afford. Her phone buzzed as she reached her car. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb the green button. Is this Maya Torres? A man's voice, deep and formal. Speaking. Ms. Torres, my name is Lieutenant Colonel James Mitchell. I'm calling from Ashford General Hospital on behalf of Captain Garrett Stone, the man you saved yesterday at Crescent Bistro. Maya leaned against her car, suddenly needing the support. Is he okay? He's stable, in critical but stable condition. The doctors say if you hadn't intervened when you did, he wouldn't have made it to the ambulance. A pause. Captain Stone is a Navy SEAL, Ms. Torres. Active duty special operations. And when he woke up this morning, the first thing he asked was who saved his life. I just did what anyone with my training would have done. That's not what the witnesses said. They said you were pushed, threatened, nearly removed by force. They said you kept working while everyone else panicked. Another pause. Captain Stone would like to meet you, if you're willing. Maya closed her eyes. I don't need thanks. I'm just glad he's alive. It's not about thanks, Ms. Torres. It's about recognition. Captain Stone doesn't forget people who put themselves at risk for him. Neither does his unit. Something in the man's tone made Maya's pulse quicken. His unit? SEAL Team 5. And they're very interested in meeting the woman who refused to let one of their own die in a restaurant. Maya's phone beeped. Another call coming in. She glanced at the screen. Riverside Memorial HR Department. She sent it to voicemail. When? She asked. Today, if possible. Captain Stone is in the ICU at Ashford General. I can arrange clearance for you. Maya looked back at the hospital she'd just been politely ejected from, then at the road stretching away toward the rest of the city. She thought about Patricia's tight smile, about being told she was too much, too loud, too visible, about being asked to shrink herself down to fit into spaces that would never make room for her. I'll be there in an hour, she said. She disconnected and stood there for a moment, her hand still on her car door. The morning sun was warm on her face. Traffic hummed past on the boulevard. Somewhere in the distance, an ambulance siren wailed, racing toward someone who needed help more than they needed permission. Maya got in her car and drove toward Ashford General, toward a man she'd kept alive with her hands and her training and her refusal to walk away when walking away would have been easier. She didn't know that in 24 hours, her entire life would change. She didn't know that the quiet nurse from Riverside Memorial would become someone else entirely, someone she'd thought she'd left behind in dust and blood and distant places. She didn't know that justice was coming, wearing combat boots and dress blues, and it would arrive at her door like thunder. All she knew was that she'd made a choice in that restaurant, and she'd make it again, every time. Some things were worth fighting for, some lines were worth holding, and some people once saved never forgot. Ashford General Hospital rose from the downtown medical district like a fortress of glass and steel, 12 stories of cutting-edge trauma care that served the entire northern corridor. Maya had been here twice before, both times transferring patients from Riverside Memorial when their cases exceeded what a community hospital could handle. She'd never walked through the main entrance as a visitor, never felt the weight of the lobby's vaulted ceiling pressing down on her as she approached the information desk. The woman behind the counter looked up with the practiced smile of someone who delivered bad news professionally. Can I help you? I'm here to see Captain Garrett Stone, ICU. Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell should have called ahead. The smile shifted, becoming something more genuine. Maya Torres? Yes. One moment. The woman picked up a phone, spoke quietly, then nodded. 4th floor, ICU East. Someone will meet you at the elevator. The elevator ride felt longer than it was. Maya watched the numbers climb, her reflection fragmenting across the polished steel doors. She'd changed before leaving home, trading her scrubs for jeans and a plain sweater, but she could still feel yesterday's blood on her hands, still taste copper on her tongue when she swallowed. The doors opened to reveal a man in camouflage fatigues, his bearing so rigidly military that he might as well have been standing at attention. He was perhaps 50, with gray threading through close-cropped dark hair and eyes that assessed her in a single sweep. Ms. Torres, Lieutenant Colonel James Mitchell. He extended a hand. His grip was firm, brief, professional. Thank you for coming. How is he? Critical but stable, as I said. The surgeons removed the bullet and repaired the damage to his lung. He's sedated but conscious. Mitchell gestured down a corridor lined with windows overlooking the city. He's been asking for you since he woke up. They walked in silence past the ICU nursing station, where two nurses looked up and then away with the careful neutrality of people who'd been briefed not to ask questions. Mitchell stopped at a closed door, his hand on the handle. Before we go in, I need you to understand something. Captain Stone is not just any patient. He's a decorated special operations officer with 16 years of service. What happened yesterday, a SEAL getting shot in a civilian restaurant while on leave, it's not something that goes unnoticed. Maya met his gaze. Is that a warning? It's context. Mitchell opened the door. He's been watching the news. He knows what they tried to do to you. The room was dim, monitors beeping softly in the corner. The man in the bed was younger than Maya had expected, maybe mid-30s, with the lean build of someone who lived by physical standards most people couldn't imagine. Tubes ran from his chest and arms. An oxygen cannula sat beneath his nose. But his eyes were clear when they found her, intensely blue, tracking her movement as she stepped inside. Captain Stone, Mitchell said. This is Maya Torres. The man's voice was rough, abraded by the ventilator tube they'd clearly removed recently. You're smaller than I expected. Maya almost smiled. You were unconscious. Everyone looks bigger when you're bleeding out on a floor. Something flickered across Stone's face. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation. I heard what you did. The compressions, the breathing, keeping me alive when my heart stopped. I did what I was trained to do. Most people freeze. Stone shifted slightly, wincing. Most people run. You dropped into a pool of my blood and refused to leave when they tried to drag you away. Maya glanced at Mitchell, who stood by the door with his arms crossed, watching. The restaurant staff was concerned about liability. Plus, the restaurant staff, Stone said slowly, tried to let me die because they were afraid of a lawsuit. They didn't understand the situation. They understood perfectly. Stone's jaw tightened. I heard them. The manager yelling at you, the security guard putting his hands on you. I heard all of it, even when I couldn't respond. You told them you were a nurse, and they said that wasn't good enough. Maya said nothing. What was there to say? He was right. Mitchell spoke from the doorway. Ms. Torres was placed on administrative leave this morning by Riverside Memorial. Apparently saving your life made her too controversial for their emergency department. Stone's expression went very still. They what? It's fine, Maya said quickly. It's just a few days while things settle down. It's not fine. Stone looked at Mitchell. Tell me you're documenting this. Every detail, the security footage from the restaurant, the witness statements, the medical reports, all of it. Mitchell's voice carried an edge now, and the response from her employer. Maya's stomach knotted. I don't need you to fight my battles. This isn't about you. Stone's eyes locked on hers. It's about what's right. You saved my life, and they're punishing you for it. That doesn't stand. Captain Stone, Garrett. And before you tell me again that you were just doing your job, understand something. He paused, breathing carefully around what had to be significant pain. I've worked with combat medics. I know what it takes to stay calm when someone's bleeding out in your hands. I know the split-second decisions, the way you have to shut off everything else and just move. What you did yesterday, that wasn't luck. That was training, real training. Maya felt the words settle over her like a weight. I was a combat medic, 3 deployments. I left that behind when I came here. Why? The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. Maya looked away toward the window where Ashford City sprawled beneath a slate-gray sky. Because I wanted something quieter, something normal. I wanted to help people without wondering if I'd have enough supplies, or if the next convoy would make it through, or if the person I saved today would be dead tomorrow from something I couldn't prevent. And they took that from you anyway, Garrett said quietly. The moment you did what you were trained to do. Silence filled the room, broken only by the rhythmic beep of monitors. Maya felt something crack open inside her chest, something she'd kept sealed for 2 years. The anger she'd been pushing down since Patricia's office, since the manager's hand on her shoulder, since every moment she'd been told she was too much, or not enough, or the wrong kind of qualified. I'm sorry, she said finally. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle of whatever this is. Don't be, Garrett's voice strengthened. You gave me my life back. Whatever happens next, you did that, And I don't forget. Mitchell checked his watch. We should let you rest, Captain. But Garrett wasn't done. One more thing. My team arrives tomorrow. They'll want to meet you. Your team? SEAL Team 5. The men I've served with for the past 8 years. A faint smile crossed his face. Fair warning, they're not subtle. When one of ours goes down, they take it personally. When someone saves one of ours, they take that personally too. Maya didn't know what to say to that. She nodded and turned to leave, but Garrett's voice stopped her at the door. Maya, thank you for not walking away. She looked back at him, this man she'd kept alive with sheer stubbornness and muscle memory. Someone told me once that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I wasn't going to be the person who did nothing. She left before he could respond, Mitchell falling into step beside her as they walked back toward the elevators. They were halfway down the corridor when he spoke. That was a quote. Edmund Burke. Though he probably never said it exactly that way. My first trauma instructor used it. It stuck. It's a good philosophy. Mitchell pressed the elevator call button. Captain Stone is serious, about his team, about making sure you're protected from any fallout. I don't need protection. I just need people to let me do my job. Sometimes those are the same thing. The elevator arrived, but Maya didn't step inside. What aren't you telling me? Mitchell's expression remained neutral, but something shifted behind his eyes. The shooter from yesterday, the man who put a bullet in Captain Stone, he's been identified. That's good, right? They can arrest him. He's dead, killed himself 6 hours after the shooting, but before he died, he sent a message to someone claiming responsibility, called it a targeted hit. Maya's blood went cold. Someone tried to assassinate a Navy SEAL in a restaurant? We don't know if it was assassination or random violence targeting military personnel. What we do know is that Captain Stone is alive because you intervened, and there are people who might not appreciate that fact. You think I'm in danger. I think you should be careful. I think you should know that the hospital has already received 3 calls asking for your personal information, all from blocked numbers. And I think you should know that Captain Stone's team takes threats to their people very seriously. And as of yesterday, you became one of their people. The elevator doors started to close. Mitchell caught them, held them open. Go home, Ms. Torres, lock your doors, and keep your phone on. Things are going to move quickly from here. Maya stepped into the elevator, her mind racing. The doors closed, and she watched Mitchell's reflection fragment and disappear as she descended. The lobby was busier than when she'd arrived, filled with afternoon visitors and staff changes. Maya pushed through the crowd, barely seeing them, her thoughts spinning. Targeted hit. Blocked calls. You became one of their people. She made it to her car before her hands started shaking. It took 3 tries to get her key in the ignition. When the engine finally turned over, she sat there gripping the steering wheel, breathing deliberately, forcing her heart rate down through sheer discipline. She'd been in dangerous situations before. She'd worked in forward operating bases where incoming fire was a daily reality. This was just information, just data. Nothing she couldn't handle. Except she'd left that life behind. She'd chosen to walk away from the danger, from the constant vigilance, from always wondering if today would be the day something went wrong. She'd built a quiet life in Ashford City specifically because it was quiet, because nothing ever happened here, because she could go to work and come home and sleep through the night without nightmares. One gunshot had shattered all of that. Maya drove home on autopilot, her training keeping her aware of her surroundings even as her conscious mind struggled to process. She checked her mirrors constantly, took an indirect route, parked where she could see the street from her apartment window. Inside, she locked the door, drew the curtains, and sat on her couch in the gathering dark. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell. Please confirm you made it home safely." She typed back, "Home." "Fine." The response came immediately. "Good. Captain Stone's team arrives at 0800 tomorrow. They'll want to meet you. Can you come to Ashford General?" Maya stared at the message. She could say no, could tell them she appreciated their concern but wanted to be left alone, could go back to her quiet life, or what remained of it, and hope everything settled down. But the memory of Garrett Stone's voice echoed in her mind. "You gave me my life back. Whatever happens next, you did that." She typed, "I'll be there." Sleep came in fragments that night, broken by sounds that might have been nothing or might have been someone testing her door, her windows, her locks. By dawn, Maya had given up and was sitting at her kitchen table with coffee she didn't taste, watching the sun paint her walls gold. Her phone rang at 7:30. Unknown number again. Hello. Ms. Torres, this is Sergeant Ramos from Ashford PD. We have a few follow-up questions about the incident at Crescent Bistro. Would you be available to come to the station today? Maya's grip tightened on the phone. I gave a full statement the day it happened. Yes, ma'am, and we appreciate that. But some new information has come to light, and we need to verify a few details. It won't take long. What kind of new information? A pause. It would be better to discuss this in person. Would 10 o'clock work for you? Maya closed her eyes. I have somewhere to be at 8. How about noon then? Main precinct, downtown. Ask for Detective Hernandez when you arrive. Fine. Noon. She disconnected and sat there, coffee cooling in her hands, wondering what new information could possibly require additional questioning. Unless they'd found something about the shooter. Unless there was more to yesterday's attack than random violence. Unless Mitchell was right, and she'd stepped into something much bigger than she'd realized. At 7:50, Maya, dressed in dark jeans and a jacket, pulled her hair into a tight braid and checked her reflection. She looked tired, drawn, like someone who'd spent the night expecting trouble and finding it in every shadow. She looked like she had 2 years ago, before Ashford City, before the quiet life. The drive to Ashford General took 15 minutes. Maya parked in the visitor lot and walked across the plaza to the main entrance, her breath misting in the cold morning air. The lobby was nearly empty this early, just a janitor pushing a mop and a security guard reading something on his phone. Mitchell was waiting by the elevators, but he wasn't alone. There were 6 of them, all in civilian clothes, but Maya knew military bearing when she saw it. They stood in a loose group, not quite at attention, but close, their postures radiating the kind of readiness that came from years of training. All men, all between their late 20s and early 40s, all watching her with the same assessing gaze Mitchell had used yesterday. Ms. Torres. Mitchell stepped forward. Thank you for coming. These are members of SEAL Team 5. They wanted to meet you before visiting Captain Stone. One of the men separated from the group, taller than the others, with a scar running down his left cheek. Ma'am, Master Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb. I'm the team's senior chief. His voice was pure gravel. Captain Stone is my officer. You saved his life. Maya found her voice. I did what anyone with medical training would do. No. Webb's response was flat, absolute. You did what most people wouldn't. We've all seen the footage. We know what happened. Another man stepped forward, younger, with the easy confidence of someone who'd never met a situation he couldn't handle. Lieutenant Diego Vargas. Captain Stone told us about your background. Combat medic, 3 deployments. That's serious credentials. That was a long time ago. Muscle memory doesn't fade. This from a third man, stockier, with intelligent dark eyes. Petty Officer First Class Aaron Kim. I'm the team medic. What you did in that restaurant, the positioning, the compressions, the way you handled the chest wound, that was textbook field trauma care. Better than textbook. Maya felt herself being evaluated, measured against standards she'd thought she'd left behind. Your captain is alive. That's all that matters. Webb exchanged glances with the others. The captain told us what your hospital did, putting you on leave for saving his life. It's complicated. It's wrong. Vargas's voice carried an edge. And it's going to be corrected. Before Maya could ask what that meant, the elevator doors opened and more people spilled into the lobby. Not civilians this time. More SEALs, at least a dozen, maybe more. Some in fatigues, some in dress uniforms, all moving with the synchronized precision of a unit that had worked together so long they functioned as a single organism. Webb noticed her expression. We called in everyone who could make it. When one of ours goes down, the whole team responds. There must be 30 people here. 32. Kim's voice was quiet. And more coming. The word went out yesterday. SEAL down, civilian nurse saved him, restaurant tried to stop her. By last night, half the special operations community on the West Coast wanted to know your name. Maya's chest tightened. I don't understand. Mitchell spoke from beside her. What you need to understand, Ms. Torres, is that the special operations community is small. We all know each other. We all depend on each other. And when someone from outside that community puts their career and safety on the line for one of us, we don't forget. The crowd was growing, more uniforms filtering in, some carrying flowers, others with cards or small gifts. Maya watched them file past the security desk toward the elevators, toward the fourth floor, toward Garrett Stone's room. This is too much, she said. He doesn't need this many visitors. He needs rest. He needs to see his brothers, Webb corrected. He needs to know his team is here, and they need to see him alive. His gaze settled on Maya. Because of you. The weight of those words, of all those eyes on her, made Maya want to step back, to disappear, to return to being invisible. But she'd learned a long time ago that some things couldn't be undone. Some choices couldn't be taken back. She'd chosen to save Garrett Stone's life. Everything that followed was consequence. I need to leave, she said abruptly. I have to be at the police station at noon. They want to ask more questions. Mitchell's expression sharpened. About what? They said new information came to light. They want to verify details. Webb and Mitchell exchanged a look that made Maya's instincts scream warning. What aren't you telling me? The shooter didn't act alone, Mitchell said finally. We got confirmation this morning. There were at least 2 others involved in planning the attack. They're still out there. The lobby seemed to tilt. Maya steadied herself against the wall. You think they'll come after me? We think they might be interested in anyone connected to Captain Stone. And you're very publicly connected now. Webb's voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. Which is why we're offering you protection. Protection. 24-hour security. We have people trained for this. They'll stay with you, keep you safe until the threats are neutralized. Maya shook her head. I don't need babysitters. I need my life back. Your life changed the moment you saved the captain, Vargas said. You can accept that and let us help, or you can refuse and hope nothing happens. This is insane. I'm a nurse. I live in a quiet neighborhood. I'm not... You're a target. Kim's voice cut through her protest. Whether you accept that or not. The people who tried to kill Captain Stone know you saved him. They know your name, your face, where you work. They've already called your hospital asking about you. How long before they find your address? Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands. Another unknown number. She answered without thinking. Maya Torres? Speaking. This is Detective Hernandez, Ashford PD. I need you to come to the station immediately. Don't go home. Don't go to work. Come directly here. What's wrong? Ma'am, we have reason to believe your apartment has been compromised. Officers are on scene now. How soon can you get here? The phone slipped from Maya's hand. Webb caught it before it hit the floor, spoke into it briefly, then disconnected. They found someone inside your apartment, he said quietly, searching for something, or waiting for you to come home. The lobby spun. Maya's training told her to breathe, to focus, to think tactically, but all she could process was that someone had been in her home, in her space, waiting. Mitchell's hand was on her shoulder, steady and grounding. Miss Torres, Maya, you're not alone in this. We've got you. I don't even know what this is. It's war, Webb said simply. Someone declared it when they put a bullet in our captain. You stepped into the crossfire when you refused to let him die. Now you're part of it, whether you want to be or not. Maya looked at the crowd of SEALs filing past, at these men who'd dropped everything to come support one of their own. She thought about Garrett Stone in his hospital bed, tubes in his chest, asking for her. She thought about her empty apartment with its violated locks, and whoever had been inside, searching, waiting. She thought about the manager at Crescent Bistro saying you're just a nurse, and Patricia from HR suggesting she wasn't the right fit, and every moment in the past 2 years when she'd tried to be smaller, quieter, less than what she was. What do you need me to do? She asked. Webb's expression didn't change, but something like approval flickered in his eyes. First, you come with us to the station. You give your statement. Then you let us take you somewhere safe while we figure out who's coming for you and why. And my job? My life? Still there when this is over, but only if you're alive to return to it. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle this herself, that she didn't need their help, that she was fine. But she'd seen too much, survived too much, to lie to herself now. "Okay," she said. "Okay." The ride to the police station happened in a convoy. 3 vehicles, 12 SEALs, and Maya in the middle car between Webb and Kim. Nobody spoke. The silence was tactical, professional, the kind of quiet that came before engagement. Ashford PD's main precinct was a fortress of concrete and bulletproof glass in the government district. Maya had never been inside. She followed Mitchell through security, through a maze of corridors, into a conference room where Detective Hernandez waited with 2 other officers and a laptop showing frozen security footage. "Ms. Torres, thank you for coming so quickly." Hernandez was a woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled back severely, exhaustion written in the lines around her eyes. "I need you to look at something." She pressed play. The footage showed Maya's apartment building, the rear entrance, timestamp marked 3:17 this morning. A figure approached, hooded, gloved, moving with purpose. They bypassed the main door and went directly to the fire exit. Within 30 seconds, they were inside. "That's the entrance," Hernandez said. "Here's what they did once they got to your floor." The view switched to the hallway outside Maya's apartment. The same figure appeared, checked the corridor both ways, then knelt at her door. Lockpicks. Professional? Efficient? The door opened in under a minute. "They were inside for 18 minutes, Hernandez continued. "We have officers there now processing the scene. They went through your belongings, your computer, your files. They didn't take anything as far as we can tell. They were looking for something specific." Maya's voice came out steady, despite the ice spreading through her chest. "Did they find it?" "We don't know what they were looking for." Hernandez paused the footage. "Do you?" "No." "Ms. Torres, I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there any reason someone would be interested in you beyond your connection to Captain Stone?" Maya thought about her deployments, about the things she'd seen and done, about classified operations and sealed records. "I was a combat medic. I have a security clearance, but it's been inactive for 2 years. We're checking that angle." Hernandez closed the laptop. "In the meantime, I need you to provide a complete list of everything you remember being in your apartment. If they took something, we need to know what." The interview lasted 90 minutes. Maya answered every question, described every detail she could remember, provided passwords and access codes, and anything else they requested. Through it all, Webb and Mitchell stood against the back wall, silent observers, their presence both comforting and unsettling. When it was finally over, when Hernandez said she was free to go, Maya stood on legs that had gone numb from sitting too long. "Where am I supposed to stay? I can't go home." "That's handled," Webb said. "We have a safe location arranged. Secure, private, guarded. You'll be there until we neutralize the threat." "How long will that take?" "As long as necessary." Maya followed them out of the precinct, into the harsh afternoon light, into a reality where her quiet life had been stripped away and replaced with something she thought she'd escaped. The convoy reformed, engines running, ready to move. She got into the middle car without being told. The door closed. The vehicle pulled away from the curb. Through the tinted windows, Maya watched Ashford City slide past. The streets she'd walked, the coffee shop where she got her morning caffeine, the park where she sometimes sat on her days off. All of it suddenly foreign, suddenly dangerous, suddenly belonging to a life she might never get back. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but she knew who it was now. Garrett Stone, somehow getting her contact information, somehow staying connected even from his hospital bed. The message was simple. "They won't win. We've got your back." Maya stared at those words as the car turned onto the highway, headed for somewhere she didn't know, surrounded by men she'd just met, running from an enemy she couldn't name. She'd saved one man's life in a restaurant, and now an army was gathering at her door, but whether to protect her or bury her, she was about to find out. The safe house was 40 minutes outside Ashford City, tucked into the hills where mansions gave way to forest, and the roads turned from asphalt to gravel. Maya watched the trees thicken through the window as they climbed higher, watched civilization fall away until there was nothing but pine and shadow and the occasional flash of a security camera mounted to a tree trunk. The house itself was modern, all sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling windows that seemed like a tactical nightmare, until Maya noticed the bulletproof glass and the way the structure was positioned to provide clear sight lines in every direction. A driveway curved around to a garage large enough for 6 vehicles. Motion sensors lined the perimeter fence. Webb killed the engine and turned to face her. 2 teams rotating 12-hour shifts, someone awake and alert at all times. You don't leave without an escort. You don't answer calls from unknown numbers. You don't contact anyone we haven't cleared first. Maya nodded, too exhausted to argue. She'd been awake for 36 hours, running on adrenaline and coffee and the surreal momentum of a life coming apart at the seams. Inside, the house was sparse but functional. Kitchen stocked with basics. Living room with tactical furniture positioned for clear views of all entrances. 3 bedrooms upstairs, one of which had clearly been designated for her. Fresh sheets on the bed, toiletries in the bathroom, a selection of clothes in approximately her size laid out on the dresser. "We grabbed what we could from your apartment before the crime scene techs locked it down," Kim said from the doorway. "If you need anything else, make a list." Maya picked up one of the shirts, recognizing it as hers. "You went into my apartment." "Detective Hernandez cleared it. We figured you'd want your own things." She should have felt grateful. Instead, she felt invaded all over again, her privacy peeled away layer by layer until there was nothing left that belonged only to her. She set the shirt down carefully. "Thank you." Kim studied her for a moment. "You should eat something, then sleep. We'll wake you if anything develops." But sleep felt impossible, felt like surrender, so Maya went downstairs and found Vargas in the kitchen, assembling sandwiches with military efficiency. He slid a plate across the counter without comment. She ate because her body needed fuel, not because she tasted anything. Mitchell arrived an hour later with a laptop and a grim expression. He sat up at the dining table and gestured for Maya to join him. "We need to talk about who might want you dead." "I don't know anyone who wants me dead." "Then let's work backward. Your deployments. Where were you stationed?" Maya's jaw tightened. "That's classified. Your life is in danger. Classification is secondary." She looked at Webb, who'd appeared silently in the doorway. He nodded once, permission, or perhaps an order. "Afghanistan," Maya said finally. 2 tours. Then 6 months in an undisclosed location doing trauma support for special operations. Mitchell typed, "The undisclosed location. Was it a black site?" "I was never told its designation. I was flown in blindfolded, kept in a medical facility, saw patients who had no names and injuries I didn't ask about." "Did you ever treat anyone who might have reason to want revenge?" Maya almost laughed. "I treated dozens of people who might want revenge. Enemy combatants we stabilized for interrogation, civilians caught in crossfire, our own people who'd done things that would haunt them forever. That's what combat medicine is, trying to save everyone while knowing most of them would rather forget you existed." "Did anyone ever threaten you directly?" She thought back to those months, to the windowless rooms and the constant sound of generators and the faces that blurred together after too many 70-hour weeks. There was an interrogation subject, high-value target they called him. He'd been injured during capture. I kept him alive long enough to talk. He told me in 3 different languages that he'd find me someday and return the favor. Mitchell looked up sharply. "Name?" "I don't know. They didn't tell me names." "Description?" 40s, maybe, Chechen accent, scar across his throat like someone had tried to cut it and failed. Maya closed her eyes, pulling the memory into focus. "He had a tattoo on his left forearm, Cyrillic script. I don't read Russian, but one of the guards said it was a prayer." Webb had his phone out, texting rapidly. "When was this?" 18 months ago, just before I rotated out and came to Ashford City." "And you never reported the threat?" "I reported it to my commanding officer. He said it was standard procedure for HVTs to make threats. Told me to forget about it." Maya opened her eyes. "So I did." Mitchell and Webb exchanged another of those looks that made Maya's skin crawl. "What?" "An HVT matching that description escaped custody 7 months ago during a prison transfer in Eastern Europe," Mitchell said quietly. "His real name is Alexei Volkov. Former Spetsnaz turned arms dealer suspected of coordinating attacks on U.S. military targets. If he's in the country, then I'm not the primary target, Maya interrupted. Garrett is. I'm just collateral damage. Or you're both targets. Webb's voice was flat. Volkov doesn't do half measures. If he's here, if he knows you saved the captain, he might see it as unfinished business. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. Maya stood and walked to the window, staring out at the darkening forest. So what do we do? We find him first, Vargas said from the kitchen doorway. We've got assets tracking his known associates, monitoring border crossings, running facial recognition on every security camera in a 100-mile radius. If he's here, we'll find him. And if you don't? No one answered, because they all knew what happened if Volkov found her first. Night fell over the safe house like a curtain dropping. Maya sat in her assigned bedroom, staring at her phone, at the 17 missed calls from Riverside Memorial and the text from Patricia asking her to call back urgently. She deleted it without reading further. A knock at her door. Kim, carrying a medical kit. Thought you might want to check my supplies. Make sure I'm not missing anything critical. It was a transparent excuse to check on her, but Maya appreciated it anyway. She followed him downstairs to a room that had been converted into a makeshift medical station. Trauma supplies, medications, monitoring equipment, even a portable ultrasound. This is more than field medicine, Maya said, running her fingers over the organized shelves. This is a full surgical setup. We prepare for worst-case scenarios. Kim pulled out a tackle box filled with suture kits. Captain Stone said you did a needle decompression in Afghanistan with a ballpoint pen and a prayer. That's not quite accurate. I had a 14-gauge needle. The pen was just for the housing. Still, that takes nerve. Kim closed the box. How long since you've done trauma work? 2 years, since I left active duty. Muscle memory doesn't fade, but skills get rusty. If something goes sideways here, if we need your help, I'll be ready, Maya said. Because what else could she say? That she'd spent 2 years trying to forget how to save people under impossible conditions? That she'd deliberately let those skills atrophy because using them meant remembering things she'd worked hard to bury? Her phone buzzed. Mitchell's number. She answered. Turn on the news, he said. Channel 7. Maya found the remote and flipped through stations until she landed on a breaking news banner. Hero nurse in hiding. Family of restaurant shooting victim speaks out. The screen showed a press conference. A woman in her 60s, visibly emotional, flanked by 2 younger people who had to be her children. The caption identified her as Margaret Stone, Garrett's mother. My son is alive because of Maya Torres, Margaret was saying, her voice shaking. She saved his life when everyone else stood by and did nothing, and now she's being punished for it. Her hospital put her on leave. She's receiving threats. Someone broke into her home. This is how we treat heroes in this country? The reporter's voice cut in. Mrs. Stone, do you have a message for Miss Torres? Margaret looked directly into the camera, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on my son. Thank you for being brave when no one else was. And to everyone watching, this woman deserves our protection, not our persecution. The screen cut back to the studio, where the anchor was already bringing up social media reactions. #justice. For Maya was trending. Someone had created a petition demanding Riverside Memorial reinstate her with full benefits and a public apology. It had 50,000 signatures in 6 hours. Maya turned off the TV and sat in the sudden silence. It's already gone viral, Mitchell said through the phone. Every news outlet in the state is running the story. Riverside Memorial's getting buried in negative press. The restaurant has closed indefinitely, and the police are under pressure to find whoever broke into your apartment. I didn't ask for any of this. No, but it's happening anyway. Public opinion is a weapon, Maya. Sometimes it's the most powerful one we have. She disconnected and sat there holding the phone, trying to process the fact that her face was now being broadcast across the country, that strangers were signing petitions in her name, that the quiet anonymity she'd built so carefully was gone forever. Webb appeared in the doorway. We've got movement. Maya was on her feet instantly. Where? 2 vehicles stopped at the bottom of the access road, occupants unknown. They've been sitting there for 10 minutes. The safe house transformed. Lights went dark. Seals materialized from rooms Maya hadn't realized they occupied, each armed, each moving with silent efficiency. Vargas handed her a vest. Put this on. Stay away from windows. Maya's training kicked in automatically. She pulled on the vest, checked the fastenings, positioned herself in the interior hallway with a clear view of the stairs. Her heart rate was elevated, but controlled. Her hands were steady. Webb was on comms, his voice low and calm. Eyes on the vehicles. 2 men in the front car, at least 3 in the second. No visible weapons, but they're too still, waiting for something. Orders? Vargas asked. Hold position. Let them make the first move. The silence stretched. Maya counted her breaths, keeping them even and deep. She'd been here before, in different places with different stakes, waiting for violence that might or might not come. The waiting was always worse than the action. Then Webb's voice cracked through the tension. They're leaving, both vehicles backing out, returning the way they came. Recon, Mitchell said. They were checking our defensive posture. Or confirming Maya's location, Kim added. Webb lowered his weapon but didn't holster it. Double the perimeter watch. I want eyes on that access road 24/7. If a bird lands wrong, I want to know about it. The house didn't relax. If anything, the tension increased. Everyone now hyper-aware that they weren't just hiding, they were being hunted. Maya returned to her room but didn't bother trying to sleep. She sat on the bed with her back against the wall, her mind running through scenarios, calculating odds, preparing for outcomes she didn't want to consider. Her phone buzzed. Garrett Stone, calling from the hospital. You shouldn't be using your phone, she said instead of hello. And you shouldn't be in a safe house with a price on your head, but here we are. His voice was stronger now, the roughness fading. I saw my mother's press conference. That wasn't necessary? Yes, it was. The public needs to know what happened. They need to know what you did and what's being done to you because of it. Maya closed her eyes. Your mother said I was brave.
I wasn't brave. I was just doing my job. You were doing what most people wouldn't. That's the definition of brave. A pause. Webb told me about Volkov, about the possibility that he's here. It's just a theory. It's a credible theory, which means you're in more danger than we thought. Garrett's voice hardened. I need you to know something. If Volkov is here, if he's coming for you because you saved me, then this is my responsibility. My team will handle it. This isn't your fault. It became my fault the moment you put your hands on my chest and refused to let me die. You made yourself part of my story, Maya. That means I'm part of yours now, whether you want me to be or not.
She didn't know what to say to that. The connection between them, forged in blood and crisis, felt too new and too heavy, like a debt she hadn't agreed to carry. Just stay alive, Garrett said quietly. That's all I'm asking. Stay alive until we fix this. He disconnected before she could respond. The night passed in increments. Maya dozed in 15-minute cycles, waking at every sound, every shift in the house's rhythm. By dawn, she was exhausted and wired, a combination she recognized from deployments, from nights when sleep meant vulnerability and vulnerability meant death. Mitchell arrived at 7 with coffee and news. Riverside Memorial called a press conference for 9. They're making a statement about your status. Maya took the coffee but didn't drink it. What kind of statement? Unknown, but given the public pressure, they're probably going to offer reinstatement. I don't want reinstatement. I want them to admit they were wrong. You might get both. Mitchell set down a tablet showing the hospital's website. Their main number has been flooded with calls. Their Facebook page is getting review bombed. Major donors are asking questions. This isn't going away. Maya scrolled through the comments, watching strangers defend her to other strangers, watching her story get retold and reshaped until it barely resembled what she remembered. Someone had started calling her the Angel of Crescent Bistro. Another had photoshopped her face onto a superhero poster. This is insane, she muttered. This is justice, Mitchell corrected. Messy, public, imperfect justice, but justice nonetheless. At 8:45, they gathered in the living room to watch the press conference. Patricia from HR stood at a podium, flanked by the hospital's chief medical officer and someone Maya didn't recognize in an expensive suit. The PR consultant, probably. Patricia looked like she'd aged a decade. On behalf of Riverside Memorial Medical Center, I want to address the recent events involving one of our emergency department nurses, Maya Torres. After careful review of the circumstances surrounding the incident at Crescent Bistro, we have determined that Miss Torres acted appropriately and professionally in providing emergency medical care to a gunshot victim. Her actions were consistent with both her training and our hospital's values. A reporter shouted a question. Patricia ignored it. Effective immediately, Ms. Torres is reinstated to her position with full pay and benefits retroactive to her suspension date. Additionally, Riverside Memorial will be issuing a formal commendation for her actions and making a donation in her name to the Ashford City Emergency Services Foundation. Another question. Will there be consequences for the staff members who placed her on leave? Patricia's expression didn't flicker. We are conducting an internal review of our response protocols and will take appropriate action to ensure similar situations are handled correctly in the future. That's all we can say at this time. The press conference dissolved into shouted questions that went unanswered. Maya watched Patricia retreat from the podium, watched the hospital's leadership scurry away from accountability while pretending to embrace it. They didn't apologize, she said. They reinstated you, Webb pointed out. That's an admission of guilt without the legal liability. It's not enough. Mitchell turned off the feed. It's what you're going to get. Organizations like hospitals don't apologize publicly. They adjust policies and move forward. At least you have your job back. Maya stood and walked to the window. Outside, the forest was green and peaceful, birds moving through branches, sunlight filtering through pine needles. It looked safe. It looked like the kind of place where nothing bad could happen. But Maya knew better. She'd learned in places far from here that safety was an illusion, that violence could arrive in an instant, that the difference between life and death was often nothing more than chance and training and the willingness to act when action was terrifying. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She looked at Webb, who nodded. Hello? Maya Torres. The voice was accented. Russian or Eastern European, rough, like gravel scraping metal. You don't know me, but I know you. Every seal in the room went still. Webb was already moving, gesturing to Mitchell, who grabbed a laptop and started tracing the call. Maya kept her voice steady. Who is this? You kept me alive once, in a place with no windows. You stitched my throat and fed me water and told me I would survive to face justice. A low laugh. You were wrong about the justice. Alexei Volkov. It had to be. What do you want? The same thing you wanted when you saved the American captain. I want someone to live who should have died, and exchange your life for his. Come alone to the location I send, and I will leave the captain in peace. Stay hiding with your soldiers, and I will kill everyone you have ever cared about, one by one, until you come out anyway. I don't negotiate with terrorists. You negotiate, or you watch people die. Simple choice. The line went dead. Maya's phone buzzed immediately, a text with GPS coordinates and a time. 4 hours from now. A location in the industrial district, abandoned warehouses near the river. Webb took the phone from her hand, studying the message. It's a trap. Obviously. You're not going. Maya looked at him, at the SEALs gathered around her, at Mitchell still working the laptop trying to trace a call that was probably routed through a dozen countries. If I don't go, he'll kill innocent people. He's going to kill you. Maybe. Or maybe he'll make a mistake. Either way, I'm not hiding while people die because of me. Vargas stepped forward. You don't get to make that call. You're a civilian under our protection. I stopped being just a civilian the moment I saved Garrett's life. You said it yourself. I'm part of this now. Maya's voice stayed calm, reasonable, the same tone she'd used with panicking patients and terrified soldiers. Volkov wants me. Fine. Let's give him what he wants. With a full tactical team behind you, Webb said. It wasn't a suggestion. He said come alone. And you will appear to be alone, but we'll be there. Overwatch, extraction ready, response teams positioned. Webb's expression was granite. You walk into that warehouse with an entire SEAL team invisible around you, and when Volkov shows himself, we end this permanently. Maya thought about the man she'd kept alive, the one who'd promised her revenge in 3 languages. She thought about Garrett Stone in his hospital bed, about the soldiers standing in her lobby, about strangers signing petitions because she'd refused to let someone die. She thought about the manager at Crescent Bistro calling her just a nurse, and Patricia suggesting she wasn't the right fit, and every moment she'd been told to be smaller, quieter, less dangerous. "Do it," she said. "Set it up. But if this goes wrong, if people die because of this plan, no one dies," Webb cut her off. "That's the only acceptable outcome. We get you in, we get Volkov, we all walk out alive." The next 4 hours were preparation. Maya was fitted with a wire so small she could barely feel it against her skin. Communication device disguised as a button on her jacket, tracker sewn into her boot heel, every contingency planned, every angle covered. Kim took her aside while the others geared up. "You don't have to do this. There are other ways to handle Volkov. Name one that doesn't end with dead civilians." He couldn't. They both knew it. The warehouse district at sunset was a landscape of rust and shadow, buildings gutted and abandoned, streets cracked and overgrown. The convoy stopped 6 blocks away. Maya got out alone, watching the vehicles disappear into the urban decay like they'd never existed. But they were there, on rooftops, in ruins, positioned for clear shots and rapid response. Invisible, but present. Maya walked toward the coordinates, her footsteps echoing off broken concrete. The warehouse Volkov had chosen was a massive structure, walls tagged with graffiti, windows shattered, a graveyard of industrial ambition. She stepped through the entrance and stopped, letting her eyes adjust to the dimness. The space was cavernous, empty except for rusted equipment and puddles of standing water, pigeons scattered from rafters high above. "Hello, little medic." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Maya turned slowly, scanning shadows. Volkov emerged from behind a support pillar, and Maya's memory snapped into focus. Same scar across his throat, same cold eyes. But he looked healthier now, stronger, not the broken man she'd stabilized in that windowless room. He was armed. Of course he was armed. "You came," he said, almost surprised. "I thought the soldiers would convince you to hide." "I don't hide from my choices." "Brave words. Let's see if you're brave in other ways." Volkov gestured, and 2 more men appeared from the shadows, both armed, both positioned to cut off her escape routes. "On your knees." Maya didn't move. "You said in exchange, my life for the captain's. I'm here. Let him live." "The captain will die screaming in his hospital bed tonight unless you prove you're worth the trade." Volkov pulled out a phone, showed her a live feed of Ashford General Hospital. "I have men positioned outside his room. One call from me, and they execute him and anyone else who gets in their way." The wire against Maya's skin suddenly felt like a bomb. Webb and his team were listening to every word, making calculations, adjusting plans. But they were 6 blocks away. They couldn't stop an attack on the hospital. "What do you want me to do?" Maya asked. Volkov smiled. "I want you to beg. I want you on your knees, pleading for the life of the man you saved. I want to hear you admit that all your training, all your skill, means nothing when I decide who lives and who dies." Maya looked at him, at this man she'd kept alive, and felt something cold and clear settle over her. She'd been afraid, had been running on adrenaline and terror since the moment someone broke into her apartment. But fear was just another kind of wound. You could stabilize it, control it, use it. "No," she said quietly. Volkov's expression darkened. "What?" "I said no. You want me on my knees? Come make me kneel." Maya's voice didn't shake. "You want me to beg? I've watched better men than you die. I've held soldiers while they bled out in my arms. You think you scare me? You're just another patient who needs treatment." The 2 armed men moved forward. Maya's hand went to her jacket, to the button that wasn't a button, and every window in the warehouse exploded inward as SEAL Team 5 came through in a synchronized breach that was beautiful and terrible and utterly professional. Volkov's men went down before they could fire. Laser sights painted Volkov's chest from 6 different angles. Webb's voice echoed through the space, amplified and absolute. "Alexei Volkov, drop your weapon. Get on the ground. You have 3 seconds to comply." But Volkov wasn't looking at the SEALs. He was looking at Maya, and his expression was something between rage and respect. "You brought them," he said. "I told you. I don't hide from my choices. Maya stepped back as Webb and his team closed in. And my choice was to end you. Volkov's hand moved toward his weapon. Every seal in the room shifted, ready to fire. Maya saw it happening in slow motion, saw Volkov's finger tightening on the trigger, saw him aiming not at the seals but at her, saw the moment when his decision crystallized into action. She dropped and rolled as the gunshot cracked through the warehouse. The return fire was immediate and overwhelming. Volkov went down hard, his weapon clattering across concrete, blood spreading from multiple impact points. Maya stayed low, hands over her head, as the SEALs secured the space. Shouting, movement, tactical efficiency, and chaos. When Webb pulled her to her feet, she was shaking. "You're hit," he said, his hands already checking her for wounds. Maya looked down, blood on her jacket, but it wasn't hers. Volkov's, from when she'd rolled past him. "I'm fine. The hospital." Team 6 intercepted Volkov's men outside Ashford General. Captain Stone is secure. Everyone's secure. Webb's grip on her shoulders was the only thing keeping her upright. "It's over, Maya. You're safe." But she wasn't listening. She was staring at Volkov's body, at the medics working to stabilize him, at the blood pooling beneath him that she knew meant catastrophic damage. Training overrode everything else. She pulled away from Webb and dropped beside Volkov, her hands finding the wounds, applying pressure. "What are you doing?" one of the medics asked. "Keeping him alive." Maya's voice was mechanical, professional. "We need him for intelligence. He dies. We lose everything he knows." She worked with the kind of focus that came from muscle memory older than thought. Stopped the bleeding, stabilized his airway, coordinated with the medics while Webb called for emergency transport. Volkov's eyes opened, found hers. He tried to speak, but no words came. "Don't talk," Maya said. "You're losing too much blood. Just breathe." His hand found hers, squeezed once. She didn't know if it was gratitude or fury or just the reflex of a body fighting to survive. The ambulance arrived. They loaded Volkov onto a stretcher, and Maya stood there covered in his blood for the second time in her life, watching them take him away. Webb appeared at her side. "You saved him again." "I know." Even after everything he did, everything he tried to do. Maya looked at her blood-stained hands. "I'm a medic. It's what I do. I don't choose who deserves to live. I just try to make sure they get that chance." The warehouse was swarming with federal agents now. Evidence teams, tactical response units. Maya gave her statement 3 times to 3 different agencies. Confirmed details. Reviewed footage. Signed forms she barely read. By the time they let her leave, it was past midnight. Webb drove her back to the safe house in silence, and Maya watched the city lights blur past, too tired to process what had happened, what it meant, what came next. Her phone buzzed. Garrett Stone. "I heard," he said when she answered. "Webb gave me the brief. You saved Volkov." "I kept him alive for interrogation." "You saved the man who tried to kill you. After he tried to kill you." Garrett's voice carried something she couldn't identify. "That's who you are, Maya. That's why 200 soldiers are about to show up at your door tomorrow morning." Maya's exhausted brain struggled to process that. "What?" "You'll see. Just know that we don't forget. We never forget." He disconnected, leaving Maya staring at her phone in the dark car, wondering what the hell he meant. They reached the safe house. Maya stumbled inside and made it as far as the couch before her legs gave out. She sat there in the dim light, still wearing Volkov's blood, still feeling the echo of his pulse beneath her fingers. Webb brought her water she didn't drink and a blanket she didn't need. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be intense." But Maya was past sleep, past exhaustion, into that strange clarity that came after crisis. What happens now? Now we process Volkov, extract intelligence, dismantle his network, make sure no one else comes looking for revenge. Webb sat across from her. "And you go back to your life." "What life? The one where I'm a controversial nurse at a hospital that only wants me back because of bad publicity? Where strangers know my face and my story? Where I can't walk down the street without wondering if someone's watching? The life where you're alive, where you made a difference, where people remember what you did and why it mattered." Maya closed her eyes. She wanted to believe that, wanted to believe the cost had been worth it. but all she could feel was tired. She must have dozed because when she opened her eyes again, dawn was breaking through the windows and the safe house was filled with noise. Vehicles outside, voices, movement. Maya stood on unsteady legs and looked out the window. The driveway was packed with cars and trucks. Men in uniform were arriving in groups, some active duty, some veterans, all gathering around the safe house with the coordinated purpose of a military operation. There had to be 50 of them, 100, more arriving every minute. Webb appeared beside her. "They're here for you." "Why?" "Because word got out about what you did yesterday, about saving Volkov even after he tried to kill you, about choosing to be a medic instead of choosing revenge." Webb's voice was quiet. "They're here to show respect, to show that some things matter more than anger, that choosing to save lives, even the lives of our enemies, is what makes us different." Maya watched through the window as more vehicles arrived, as the crowd swelled, as 200 soldiers gathered in formation around the safe house. And she understood. This wasn't just about Garrett Stone anymore. This was about every life she'd saved, every choice she'd made to heal instead of harm, every moment she'd stood in blood and chaos and refused to stop fighting for whoever needed her. This was recognition, not from a hospital or a restaurant or the media, from the people who understood what it cost. Webb's phone rang. He answered, listened, then turned to Maya with an expression she couldn't read. "Captain Stone is being discharged from the hospital today. He asked if you'd meet him at Ashford General at noon." "Why?" "He didn't say, but I think you should go." Maya looked at her reflection in the window, exhausted, blood-stained, barely holding together. Then she looked at the soldiers outside, at this army that had gathered not to threaten, but to honor. "Tell him I'll be there," she said. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered what justice looked like when it finally arrived. She was about to find out. The drive to Ashford General took 30 minutes through mid-morning traffic. Maya wedged between Vargas and Kim in the back seat while Webb drove with the controlled aggression of someone who'd learned to navigate in war zones. The convoy behind them, 3 additional vehicles carrying SEALs who refused to let her travel unprotected, felt both reassuring and surreal. Maya had showered and changed into clean clothes, but she could still feel Volkov's blood on her hands, still hear the wet sound of his breathing as she'd worked to keep him alive. Again. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd saved the same man twice now, once because it was her duty, once because letting him die would have made her something she refused to become. Her phone had been buzzing since dawn. Messages from news outlets requesting interviews, emails from advocacy groups wanting her to speak at events, a voicemail from a literary agent suggesting she write a book. She'd ignored all of it, focusing instead on the single text from Garrett Stone. "Noon, ICU waiting room. There's something you need to see." Webb pulled into the hospital's main entrance and killed the engine. Through the windshield, Maya could see the crowd. It stretched across the plaza in front of Ashford General, hundreds of people holding signs and flowers and candles, even though it was barely noon. Some wore military uniforms. Others were clearly civilians, families with children, elderly couples, young adults with phones raised to capture the moment. They weren't protesting, they were waiting. "What is this?" Maya asked. "Public support," Kim said quietly. "Word got out that you'd be here. Social media did the rest." A barricade had been erected to keep the crowd back from the entrance. Hospital security lined the perimeter, their expressions suggesting they'd never dealt with anything like this before. As Maya stepped out of the vehicle, a ripple went through the crowd, recognition spreading like wildfire. Someone started clapping, then another. Within seconds, the entire plaza erupted in applause, the sound washing over Maya like a physical force. She froze, overwhelmed, her training providing no protocol for this situation. Webb's hand settled on her shoulder. "Keep moving. Don't stop. Don't engage. Straight to the entrance." Maya walked through the gauntlet of applause and shouting, her head down, her focus narrowed to the glass doors ahead. Someone thrust flowers at her. She didn't take them. Someone else called her name. She didn't respond. The noise was deafening, the attention suffocating. Everything she'd spent 2 years avoiding concentrated into a single moment. The doors closed behind them, muffling the sound. The lobby was quieter, but still abnormally crowded.
People clustered in groups, whispering and pointing. Maya recognized the expressions, the same ones she'd seen after major news events, when tragedy or heroism transformed ordinary people into temporary celebrities. She hated it. The elevator to the ICU floor was mercifully empty. Maya leaned against the wall and closed her eyes, feeling the acceleration in her stomach, the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her shoulders. "You okay?" Vargas asked. "No." "Fair enough." The doors opened to reveal Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell waiting in the hallway, his uniform crisp despite the early hour. He nodded to the SEALs, then focused on Maya. "Captain Stone is in the family conference room. He's not alone." "Who's with him?" "You'll see. Come on." Mitchell led her down a corridor Maya remembered from her first visit, past the ICU nursing station where staff pretended not to stare. The conference room door was closed. Mitchell knocked once and opened it without waiting for a response. Inside, Garrett Stone sat in a wheelchair, dressed in civilian clothes with bandages visible beneath his shirt collar. He looked thin, pale, but his eyes were clear and alert. Standing beside him was his mother Margaret, the woman from the press conference, and seated around the table were a dozen other people Maya didn't recognize, some in business attire, others in casual clothes, all wearing expressions of barely contained anger. Garrett gestured to an empty chair. "Maya, thanks for coming. I want you to meet some people who've been working on your behalf." The man closest to Maya stood and extended a hand. "Robert Chen, attorney. I specialize in employment law and medical malpractice. Mrs. Stone contacted me 3 days ago about your situation with Riverside Memorial." Maya shook his hand automatically. "I don't understand." "Sit down," Garrett said. It wasn't a request. "Please." She sat. Chen resumed his position and pulled out a tablet, swiping through documents with practiced efficiency. "Over the past 72 hours, my firm has been investigating the circumstances surrounding your administrative leave from Riverside Memorial Medical Center. What we found is deeply concerning." He turned the tablet to show Maya a spreadsheet dense with dates and names. "Your supervisor, Patricia Reeves, has a documented history of placing female medical staff on leave following high-profile incidents. You're the 7th nurse in 3 years to be suspended after making a decision that contradicted hospital administration." Maya stared at the names. 7? 7 that we could verify. All women. All eventually reinstated, but only after significant career damage. 2 left the hospital entirely. 1 filed a lawsuit that was settled confidentially. Chen swiped again. "Patricia Reeves also has personal connections to the owner of Crescent Bistro. Her brother-in-law is a silent partner in the restaurant group." The implications hit Maya like cold water. She was protecting them. "Correct. When you saved Captain Stone despite their staff's interference, you created a liability nightmare for people Patricia cares about. So she used her authority to neutralize you, counting on the fact that most nurses don't have the resources or public support to fight back." Another person spoke up. A woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a recorder on the table in front of her. "Jessica Park, investigative journalist. I've been covering healthcare administration corruption for 15 years. The story your case opened up is bigger than just Riverside Memorial. I found connections between Patricia Reeves and at least 3 other medical facilities in the state, all showing similar patterns of retaliation against staff who make waves." Garrett leaned forward, wincing slightly at the movement. "They thought you'd be quiet, that you'd take the suspension, accept the reinstatement, and never ask questions. They didn't count on my mother making it a public issue." Margaret Stone spoke for the first time, her voice steady but laced with steel. "When I found out what that hospital did to you, I made some calls. Robert is a family friend. Jessica's daughter went to school with my nephew. We put together a team because what happened to you is unacceptable." Chen pulled up another document. "Yesterday, while you were dealing with the Volkov situation, we filed a formal complaint with the state medical board alleging systematic retaliation and workplace discrimination at Riverside Memorial. We also contacted the Department of Labor and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Patricia Reeves has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation." Maya's mind reeled. "You got her suspended?" "We got her investigated. The suspension was the hospital's decision once they realized how much evidence we'd compiled."
Chen's expression remained neutral. They're trying to distance themselves from her actions, claim she was operating outside their knowledge and authority. Were they? Doubtful, but proving institutional knowledge is harder than proving individual misconduct. We're pursuing both angles. Jessica leaned in. I'm running the full story tomorrow. Front page. Hospital administrator's pattern of retaliation exposed after SEAL shooting. Every news outlet in the state will pick it up within hours. Vargas, who'd been standing silently by the door, spoke up. What about Crescent Bistro? Already handled, Chen said. The restaurant closed indefinitely 3 days ago, but we've obtained documentation showing they're filing for bankruptcy. The civil lawsuits from other customers who were present during the shooting have buried them. The manager who tried to remove Maya during the medical emergency has been named personally in multiple complaints. Maya looked at Garrett, at this man she'd saved who'd somehow marshaled an entire campaign in her defense while recovering from a gunshot wound. Why are you doing this? Because it's right. His answer was immediate, absolute. Because you saved my life and they tried to destroy yours for it. Because people like Patricia Reeves operate in the dark, and the only way to stop them is to drag everything into the light. Margaret reached across the table and took Maya's hand. Her grip was warm, maternal, grounding. My son could have died on that restaurant floor while people stood around with their phones out. You're the reason he's alive, the reason I still have my child. Whatever you need, whatever it takes, we're in this with you. The conference room door opened and a hospital administrator Maya vaguely recognized entered, followed by another man in an expensive suit. The administrator's expression was carefully neutral, but Maya could see the tension in his shoulders. Ms. Torres, I'm David Winters, Chief Operating Officer of Ashford General Hospital. This is Marcus Reed, our Head of Legal Affairs. We were hoping to speak with you briefly. Chen stood smoothly. My client isn't answering questions without representation present. We're not here to ask questions, Winters said quickly. We're here to make an offer. The room went silent. Garrett's eyes narrowed. Webb shifted position, a subtle movement that suggested readiness for conflict. Winters pulled out a chair but didn't sit. Ashford General has been following your case with great interest. Your actions at Crescent Bistro demonstrated exceptional skill and composure under pressure. The way you've handled the subsequent threats and maintained your professional standards despite personal danger, it's exactly the kind of character we look for in our trauma department staff. Maya felt the pitch coming before he finished. We'd like to offer you a position in our emergency department, Level 3 Trauma Center, significantly higher pay than Riverside Memorial, full benefits, and a signing bonus. We'd also provide security consultation and support given the recent threats against you. Chen's expression didn't change, but Maya saw calculation behind his eyes. What's the catch? Reed, the legal counsel, spoke for the first time. No catch. We want Ms. Torres because she's an exceptional nurse. However, we'd also appreciate her discretion regarding any media appearances or public statements about healthcare administration practices during her first year of employment. You want to buy her silence, Vargas said flatly. We want to hire a talented medical professional, Winters corrected. The discretion clause is standard for high-profile hires. It protects both the employee and the institution from unwanted attention. Maya looked at the offer letter Winters had placed on the table. The salary was nearly double what Riverside Memorial paid. The benefits package was comprehensive. It was everything she'd wanted 2 years ago when she'd first moved to Ashford City. A good job at a respected hospital, financial security, a chance to move forward. All she had to do was stay quiet about Patricia Reeves, about the pattern of retaliation, about the systemic problems Jessica Park was about to expose to the world. She picked up the offer letter, read it carefully, then set it down and met Winters' eyes. No. Winters blinked. I'm sorry? No, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in being bought. Maya's voice was calm, professional. Patricia Reeves and people like her have operated without accountability for too long. If accepting your job means staying silent about that, then I'll find employment elsewhere. Reed leaned forward. Ms. Torres, I urge you to reconsider. Ashford General is the premier trauma facility in the region. This opportunity, is contingent on me prioritizing your institution's reputation over patient safety and staff protection. Maya stood. I was a combat medic before I was a civilian nurse. I learned a long time ago that some things are more important than career advancement. This is one of them. Garrett was smiling now, a fierce expression that suggested pride. Margaret squeezed Maya's hand once before releasing it. Winters and Reed exchanged glances. The COO's carefully neutral expression cracked slightly, revealing frustration beneath. I see. Well, if you change your mind, I won't. They left without further argument, the door closing with a soft click that felt like punctuation. Jessica Park was already typing notes on her phone. That was a hell of a quote. Some things are more important than career advancement. Mind if I use it? Use whatever you need, Maya said. She felt lighter suddenly, like she'd set down a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. Tell the whole story, everything. Chen was studying her with new interest. You realize you just turned down a six-figure salary and guaranteed employment. I turned down complicity. There's a difference. Fair enough. For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. He pulled up another document. Which brings us to the next phase. We're preparing a federal lawsuit against Riverside Memorial and Patricia Reeves personally, alleging civil rights violations, workplace retaliation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The damages could be substantial. Maya shook her head. I don't want money. I want accountability. You can have both. The money gets their attention. The publicity ensures they can't bury it. Chen's expression was all business now. But I need to know. Are you prepared for what comes next? This will be public, invasive. Every detail of your employment, your personal history, your decisions will be scrutinized. Defense attorneys will try to discredit you, paint you as opportunistic or attention-seeking. Let them try. Maya's voice carried an edge she hadn't known was there. I've been shot at by people who actually wanted me dead. I've held soldiers together with pressure and hope while mortars fell around us. A courtroom doesn't scare me. Mitchell spoke from where he'd been observing silently. The Department of Defense will provide character witnesses if needed. Captain Stone's entire chain of command is prepared to testify about the value of combat medical training and the decisions you made under pressure. Garrett added, and my team will be there. Every hearing, every deposition, every court appearance. We take care of our own. Maya looked around the room at these people who'd assembled to fight battles she hadn't asked them to fight. A lawyer she'd never met. A journalist with a recorder and a determination to expose corruption. A SEAL captain who should have been focused on his own recovery. His mother, who'd turned personal gratitude into public action. And the SEALs standing guard by the door, who'd risked their lives to protect hers. Thank you, she said quietly. All of you. I don't know how to repay. You already paid it, Margaret interrupted. You saved my son's life. Everything else is just us returning the favor. Chen started packing up his materials. We'll file the lawsuit Monday morning. I'll need you available for depositions starting next week. And Maya, prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly before it gets better. The meeting broke up gradually, people filtering out with handshakes and contact information exchanged. Jessica Park lingered, asking a few more questions for her article. Chen went over procedural details Maya only half absorbed. Finally, it was just Maya, Garrett, Margaret, and the ever-present SEAL guards. Garrett wheeled himself closer, his movements still careful, but stronger than 2 days ago. There's one more thing, the reason I really asked you here. Maya tensed. What? My team wants to honor you, formally. There's a ceremony planned for tomorrow at the naval base. The entire special operations community in the region will be there. They want to present you with a challenge coin and a commendation for your actions. I don't need recognition. It's not about need, it's about respect. Garrett's voice was firm. You're not military anymore, but you've got the heart of a combat medic. That matters to us. We want to acknowledge it publicly. Maya wanted to refuse, wanted to avoid the attention, the ceremony, the weight of more gratitude she didn't know how to carry. But looking at Garrett's expression, at the determination in his eyes, she understood that this wasn't really about her. It was about them, about the military community acknowledging that someone outside their ranks had upheld their values when it mattered most. What time? She asked. 1400 hours. Dress code is business casual. Webb will coordinate transportation and security. Margaret stood and embraced Maya, the hug fierce and brief. You gave me my son back. I'll never forget that. When they finally left the hospital, the crowd outside had doubled. Maya walked through it with her head up this time, acknowledging the applause with a brief nod, letting people see her face. She wasn't hiding anymore. The convoy drove her back to the safe house, where the other SEALs had set up a tactical operations center in the living room. Maps on the walls, computers running facial recognition software, communications equipment humming quietly. They were still hunting the remainder of Volkov's network, still ensuring no other threats remained. Kim pulled Maya aside as the others debriefed. Volkov's awake. He's asking for you. Maya's stomach clenched. Why would he want to see me? No idea. But the feds think it might be useful, if you're willing. She should have said no. Should have refused to subject herself to the man who'd tried to kill her, who'd threatened everyone she cared about, who represented everything she'd been running from. But Maya had learned something in the past few days. Running didn't make you safe, it just made you alone. Set it up, she said, but I want a full security detail present. They transported her to the federal detention facility where Volkov was being held under maximum security. The building was fortress-like, all concrete and reinforced glass, designed to contain the kinds of threats most people never knew existed. Volkov was in a medical isolation unit, handcuffed to a hospital bed, monitors tracking his vital signs. 2 armed guards stood outside the room. Maya entered with Webb and a federal agent whose name she immediately forgot. Volkov looked worse than when she'd last seen him, pale, drawn, the wounds she'd stabilized now hidden beneath surgical dressings. But his eyes were alert when they found hers. "Little medic," he said in that gravel voice. "You came. You asked for me." "I did." He shifted slightly, grimacing. "I wanted to say something before they transfer me to a black site and I disappear forever." Maya waited. "You saved my life twice now. Once because you had to. Once because you chose to." Volkov's expression was unreadable. "I spent 3 years in your American prisons planning revenge. I identified you, tracked you, learned everything about your quiet little life in this quiet little city. I was going to make you suffer the way you made me suffer. I didn't make you suffer. I kept you alive. Same thing in my world." He paused. "But when you knelt in that warehouse, when you put your hands on my wounds, even after I tried to kill you, I understood something. You are not a soldier. You are not like me. You are something else entirely. A medic. A healer, even when it costs you, even when the person you save is your enemy." Volkov's voice dropped. "That kind of strength. It is rare, precious, and it reminded me of someone I loved once, before the wars, before I became this." He gestured weakly at himself, at the handcuffs and monitors and armed guards. Maya felt something unexpected, not sympathy exactly, but recognition. She'd seen this before, in wounded combatants who'd lost themselves somewhere between ideology and violence. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm going to cooperate. Tell your federals everything about my network, my contacts, my operations. I'm going to dismantle what I built." Volkov's eyes locked on hers. "Because if someone like you can choose mercy even for someone like me, then perhaps there is a reason to choose differently than I have chosen." The federal agent stepped forward immediately, pulling out a recorder. "Mr. Volkov, are you stating for the record that you're willing to provide intelligence in exchange for—" "I want nothing in exchange except one thing." Volkov looked at Maya. "I want your promise that you will continue being exactly what you are, that you will not let them make you harder, colder, less willing to save lives that others deem unworthy." Maya considered his words, this strange request from a man who'd tried to kill her. "I can't promise to stay the same. These past few days have changed me." "Good. Change is necessary. But do not become bitter. Do not become like me." "I won't." The certainty in her voice surprised even herself. "I've seen what that looks like. I'm choosing something different." Volkov nodded once, a gesture of respect or resignation, or both. "Then we are finished. Tell your soldiers they have won, not with bullets, but with the fact that people like you exist." Maya left the detention facility feeling unsteady, Her worldview tilted at an angle she couldn't quite process. Webb drove in silence, sensing she needed time to think. By the time they returned to the safe house, evening had fallen over the hills. Maya's phone showed 37 new messages, but only one mattered, a text from Garrett. Tomorrow, 1,400 hours. You ready? She typed back, as ready as I'll ever be. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She stood at the window watching the forest shadows, thinking about everything that had happened since a gunshot shattered her quiet lunch. She'd saved a life, been threatened, hunted, nearly killed, exposed corruption, refused bribes, survived, and tomorrow she'd stand in front of the military community that had adopted her as one of their own and accept recognition she still wasn't sure she deserved. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, but she answered anyway. Maya Torres? A woman's voice, nervous but determined. Speaking. My name is Jennifer Moss. I'm a nurse at Riverside Memorial. I saw what happened to you, and She paused. I was one of the 7. Patricia Reeves suspended me 2 years ago after I reported a doctor for negligence. They made me sign an NDA as part of my reinstatement, but after seeing what you did, how you fought back, I want to break it. I want to testify. Maya's grip tightened on the phone. You know what that means? The legal risk? I know. But you risked your life to save a stranger. I can risk my career to tell the truth. Jennifer's voice strengthened. I called Robert Chen's office. They said they'd protect me if I came forward. I just wanted you to know, you're not alone in this. None of us are anymore. After they disconnected, Maya stood there in the darkness, feeling something shift inside her chest. Not just one voice speaking truth anymore, multiple voices. A chorus of people who'd been silenced, finding their courage because she'd found hers first. She thought about Patricia Reeves, about the manager at Crescent Bistro, about everyone who'd tried to make her smaller and quieter and more convenient. They'd failed. And tomorrow, the world would see exactly how badly they'd miscalculated. Maya finally slept, and for the first time in days, she didn't dream of blood and gunfire. She dreamed of standing in sunlight, surrounded by people who understood what it meant to choose courage over comfort, truth over silence, action over apathy. She dreamed of justice. And when she woke at dawn to prepare for the ceremony, she knew with absolute certainty that she was ready for whatever came next. Because some battles were worth fighting, some truths were worth telling, and some people, the ones who tried to silence heroes, were about to learn that armies don't just fight with weapons. Sometimes they fight with witness, with testimony, with the unstoppable force of truth spoken loud enough that no one could pretend not to hear. Patricia Reeves was about to discover that fact the hard way, and Maya Torres was going to be there to watch. The naval base sat on a peninsula jutting into the Pacific, all clean lines and purposeful architecture designed to project strength. Maya had been to military installations before, but never as the center of attention, never with an escort of SEALs treating her like visiting dignitaries treated heads of state. The gate guards waved them through without question, their salutes crisp and respectful. Webb navigated to a parade ground where rows of chairs faced a temporary stage. Behind it, an American flag snapped in the ocean wind. Maya counted at least 300 people already assembled, some in dress uniforms, others in civilian clothes, all waiting with the patient discipline of military personnel who understood ceremony. Her stomach churned. This was wrong. She wasn't a hero. She was just someone who'd refused to walk away when walking away would have been easier. Too late to run, Vargas said from beside her, reading her expression. Besides, you face down armed terrorists. A few speeches should be easy. Terrorists don't make me give acceptance speeches. Kim handed her a bottle of water. Just breathe. Answer when spoken to. Don't pass out. That's literally all you have to do. They walked her to a holding area behind the stage where Garrett waited in his dress uniform, medals gleaming on his chest. He was standing without the wheelchair, though Maya noticed him favoring his uninjured side. You clean up nice, he said. Maya looked down at her simple black dress and blazer. I feel like I'm at someone else's funeral. Wrong metaphor. This is a celebration. Garrett gestured to the assembled crowd. Half of these people served in special operations. The other half are family members or civilians who support the military community. They're all here because of what you did. I saved one person. You saved one of ours. That ripples out further than you realize. He paused.
My mother's in the front row. She wanted me to tell you that if you need to cry, that's allowed. She brought tissues.
Despite everything, Maya almost smiled. The ceremony began with a color guard presenting flags and a chaplain offering brief remarks that managed to avoid specific religious references while still acknowledging sacrifice and service. Then came the speeches. A rear admiral Maya didn't know talking about courage under fire. A state senator discussing the importance of everyday heroes. Margaret Stone, her voice breaking as she described watching her son recover and knowing he wouldn't have that chance without Maya's intervention. Then it was Garrett's turn. He walked to the podium slowly, carefully, but under his own power. The crowd went silent. "I'm not good at speeches," he began. "I'm better at actions, but today requires words, so I'll do my best." He looked directly at Maya. 4 days ago, I was shot in a restaurant while on leave. I remember the sound of the gun. I remember falling. I remember thinking this was a stupid way to die, not in combat, not protecting my team, but eating overpriced pasta in a civilian establishment. Quiet laughter rippled through the audience. Then I remember a woman's voice, calm, professional, telling me to stay with her. I remember her hands on my chest, the pressure, the rhythm of compressions when my heart stopped. I remember hearing people try to pull her away and her refusing to move. Garrett's voice strengthened. Maya Torres is not a member of the military. She has no obligation to us, no oath binding her to our service. But when it mattered most, she embodied every value we claim to hold: courage, commitment, selflessness, and an absolute refusal to abandon someone in need. He paused, looking out at the crowd. She saved my life. Then, when the people responsible for trying to end it came after her, she saved the enemy combatant who'd orchestrated the attack. Not because she had to, because she chose to remain a healer even when being anything else would have been easier and more justifiable. Garrett pulled a small wooden box from his pocket. This challenge coin represents SEAL Team 5. It's given to members who've proven themselves under fire, who've demonstrated the kind of character we aspire to. Maya Torres has earned it more than most of us ever will. He stepped away from the podium and approached Maya, who stood and met him halfway. The crowd rose in unison, applause building like thunder. Garrett opened the box. Inside, a bronze coin engraved with the SEAL trident gleamed in the afternoon sun. "Welcome to the family. We don't forget our own." Maya took the coin, its weight solid and real in her palm. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll remember that you're not alone, that when you need us, we'll be there, just like you were there for me." The applause continued as Maya returned to her seat, the coin clutched in her hand, tears she hadn't authorized streaming down her face. Margaret Stone reached across the aisle and squeezed her shoulder, saying nothing because nothing needed to be said. The ceremony concluded with a final speech from the commanding officer and the retiring of the colors. As the crowd dispersed, people approached Maya in waves, introducing themselves, thanking her, asking for photos she didn't want, but accepted anyway. A retired Navy corpsman who'd served in Vietnam. A young Marine who said she'd inspired him to pursue medical training. A mother whose son had been saved by a combat medic in Iraq, who wanted Maya to know that people like her were the reason families stayed whole. It was overwhelming and humbling and exhausting all at once. Webb finally intervened, creating a polite barrier between Maya and the well-wishers. "Give her some space, she'll be around." They retreated to a reception area where food had been set out, and conversations happened in smaller, more manageable groups. Maya found a corner and tried to disappear into it, but Garrett tracked her down within minutes. "You okay?" "I don't know, maybe." Maya turned the challenge coin over in her fingers. "This is a lot. It's what you've earned. Get used to it." Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed. Robert Chen, the attorney. She answered, "Maya, turn on the news, any channel, now." Someone had a television mounted in the corner of the reception hall. Maya asked them to change it to a news station, and the room gradually quieted as people noticed. The anchor's voice filled the space. Breaking news and the ongoing investigation into workplace retaliation at Riverside Memorial Medical Center. Patricia Reeves, the hospital's former HR director, has been arrested on charges of obstruction of justice and conspiracy to commit fraud. The screen showed footage of Patricia being led from her home in handcuffs, her face hidden behind her hands, reporters shouting questions she didn't answer. According to federal prosecutors, Reeves attempted to destroy evidence related to the systematic suspension of medical staff who reported safety violations or contradicted hospital administration. She also allegedly attempted to bribe witnesses to prevent them from cooperating with investigators. The anchor continued, but Maya couldn't hear over the roaring in her ears. Patricia wasn't just being investigated anymore. She'd been arrested, charged. The evidence Chen had compiled, combined with Jennifer Moss's testimony and the testimonies of other nurses who'd found courage, had been enough. Chen's voice came through her phone. There's more. The State Medical Board is conducting a full audit of Riverside Memorial's employment practices. 3 senior administrators have resigned, and the hospital is facing a class action lawsuit from former employees who were wrongfully suspended. What about Crescent Bistro? The manager who tried to remove you during the emergency has been charged with interference with medical care. It's a misdemeanor, but it's on his record permanently. The restaurant's bankruptcy filing was approved this morning. They're done. Maya lowered the phone slowly, staring at the television as it cut to an interview with one of the prosecutors. Justice wasn't just coming. It had arrived with warrants and handcuffs and the full weight of federal law enforcement. The room erupted in conversation, people reacting to the news, but Maya felt disconnected from it all. She'd imagined this moment, Patricia being held accountable, the truth exposed, vindication for everyone who'd been silenced. She'd thought she'd feel triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. Garrett appeared beside her again. You did this. You and everyone who found the courage to speak up because you spoke first. I just didn't want to be quiet anymore. That's how it starts. One person refusing to accept injustice, then another, until the people in power can't ignore it anymore. He gestured to the television. That's what systemic change looks like. It's messy and slow, and it requires people willing to stand up even when standing up costs them everything. Maya looked at him, at this man whose life she'd saved, who'd somehow turned that single act into a movement. What happens now? Now you decide what comes next. For yourself. What came next arrived in the form of Jessica Park's article, published the following morning across every major news platform in the state. The nurse they tried to silence, how Maya Torres exposed healthcare corruption and survived an assassination attempt. It was comprehensive, devastating, and meticulously sourced. Jessica had interviewed Jennifer Moss and 4 other nurses who'd been suspended by Patricia Reeves. She'd obtained internal hospital documents showing a pattern of retaliation spanning 7 years. She'd traced the connections between Reeves and the Crescent Bistro ownership group. But the most powerful part was Maya's own words, recorded during their interview at Ashford General. I didn't save Captain Stone's life because I wanted recognition or because I expected gratitude. I did it because someone needed help and I had the skills to provide it. That's what medical professionals do. We help people. And when institutions punish us for doing our jobs, when they prioritize liability over lives, they betray everything medicine is supposed to stand for. The article went viral within hours. By noon, it had been shared over 1 million times. News outlets requested interviews. Talk shows wanted Maya as a guest. Producers from a major network reached out about a documentary. Maya declined all of it. Instead, she drove to Riverside Memorial Medical Center on a gray Tuesday morning and walked through the front entrance she'd walked through dozens of times before. The lobby was quieter than usual, staff moving with subdued energy, conversations muted. People recognized her, stopped mid-sentence to stare, whispered to each other. Maya ignored them and took the elevator to the 3rd floor, to the HR office where she'd been told her career wasn't the right fit. The door was open. Inside, a woman Maya didn't recognize sat at Patricia's old desk, sorting through files with the grim determination of someone cleaning up someone else's mess. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, looking up. "I'm Maya Torres. I was told to come pick up my final paycheck and personal effects." Recognition flashed across the woman's face. "Oh, yes. I'm Karen Walsh, interim HR director. Please sit down." Maya remained standing. "I'd rather not." Karen pulled an envelope from a drawer. "Your final pay, including unused vacation time, and the retroactive compensation for your suspension period. We've also included a severance package per your attorney's negotiation. Maya took the envelope without opening it. And my personal effects? Already boxed. Security has them at the front desk. Karen hesitated. Ms. Torres, I want you to know that what happened to you was unacceptable. The hospital is implementing new protocols to ensure. I don't care about protocols. I care about accountability. Maya's voice was level, professional. Patricia Reeves operated for 7 years targeting employees who made your hospital look bad. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. That requires institutional complicity. We're conducting a full review at. Save it for the lawsuit depositions. Maya turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. The nurses Patricia targeted, Jennifer Moss, Sarah Chen, the others, they deserve compensation and public apologies. Not quiet settlements with NDAs. Public acknowledgement that they were right and the hospital was wrong. Karen's expression tightened. I can't promise. Then your new protocols are meaningless. Maya walked out, the envelope in her hand, her shoulders straight. She collected her box of personal items from security, photos, a coffee mug, the spare scrubs she kept in her locker. Everything that had defined her professional life for 18 months fit in a container small enough to carry with one arm. Outside, the sky was threatening rain. Maya loaded the box into her car and sat behind the wheel, staring at the hospital building where she'd thought she'd build a career. That life was over. The quiet nurse in the quiet hospital in the quiet city. That version of herself no longer existed. Her phone rang. Chen's number. The hospital called, he said without preamble. They want to settle. Full compensation for you and the other affected nurses. Public statement admitting wrongdoing. Implementation of independent oversight for HR decisions. And they're establishing a fund for workplace safety advocacy in your name. Maya closed her eyes. What about the individual lawsuits? Those proceed separately. But this is a win, Maya. A real one. It's not enough. It never is, but it's progress. It's acknowledgement. It's change. Chen paused. You did something most people can't. You fought an institution and won. Don't diminish that. After they disconnected, Maya sat in the parking lot and let herself feel everything she'd been pushing down for days. The anger at Patricia Reeves, the frustration with a system that protected power over people, the exhaustion of fighting battles she'd never wanted to fight, but also the satisfaction of knowing she'd refused to be silenced, the pride in standing up even when it cost her, the certainty that she'd do it all again if faced with the same choice. Her phone buzzed. A text from Garrett. Team wants to know if you're free for dinner tonight. Informal. No ceremonies, just family. Maya typed back, I'll be there. The dinner was at a barbecue place near the base, crowded and loud and completely unpretentious. SEAL Team 5 occupied 3 tables pushed together, their conversation a mix of military jargon and civilian gossip, their acceptance of Maya so natural it felt like she'd always belonged. Webb slid a beer across to her. Chen called me, told me about the settlement. Word travels fast. Small community, we take care of our own, and you're ours now, whether you like it or not. He paused. What are you going to do next? Maya had been asking herself that question since leaving Riverside Memorial. I don't know. Find another hospital, I guess. Start over somewhere that doesn't know my face. Or, Vargas interjected from across the table, you could do something different. Like what? Kim leaned in. We need civilian medical consultants, people who understand trauma care and can train first responders in field medicine. The pay's government scale, but the work matters. You want me to train people? We want you to share what you know. Your combat experience plus your civilian nursing gives you a unique perspective. Webb's expression was serious now. Think about it. You could help create the next generation of medics who know how to save lives under impossible conditions. Maya considered that. Teaching, passing on knowledge, making sure that when the next crisis happened, more people would know what to do instead of freezing while someone died. I'll think about it, she said. Garrett raised his glass. To Maya Torres, the woman who refused to let me die, refused to be silenced, and reminded all of us what courage actually looks like. The team echoed the toast, glasses clinking, and Maya felt something shift inside her chest. Not the weightlifting. She'd carry what happened for the rest of her life. But the burden felt different now, lighter, more like purpose than trauma. The weeks that followed brought resolution in increments. Patricia Reeves pled guilty to reduced charges in exchange for testimony against senior hospital administrators who'd known about and enabled her actions. 3 executives were fired. 2 faced criminal charges of their own. Jennifer Moss and the other affected nurses received settlements and public apologies. Riverside Memorial implemented independent oversight and established the Maya Torres Patient Advocacy Fund with an initial endowment of $2 million. The manager from Crescent Bistro, his name was Donald Pierce, Maya learned, was convicted of interference with medical care and sentenced to community service working with emergency response training programs. Maya hoped he learned something from it. Alexei Volkov cooperated fully with federal investigators, providing intelligence that led to the dismantling of an international arms trafficking network. He'd be spending the rest of his life in federal prison, but according to Mitchell, his cooperation had potentially saved hundreds of lives. Maya took the position training emergency medical responders. She worked with firefighters and police officers and civilian volunteers, teaching them triage and trauma care and the kind of calm decision-making that meant the difference between saving and losing lives. She was good at it, better than she'd expected. 3 months after the shooting at Crescent Bistro, Maya stood in front of a class of 30 first responders demonstrating chest compressions on a training dummy. Her students watched with the intensity of people who understood this knowledge might mean the difference between someone's father coming home or not. "The key is consistency," she said, her hands maintaining the rhythm she could perform in her sleep. "Don't stop. Don't second-guess yourself. You keep going until help arrives or until you physically can't continue, because that person on the ground, they're counting on you to be stronger than your fear." After class, one of the students approached her. A young woman, maybe 25, eyes bright with the kind of determination Maya recognized. "Ms. Torres, I just wanted to say thank you. I saw the news coverage about what you did. It made me want to become a paramedic, to be someone who runs toward emergencies instead of away from them." Maya smiled. "What's your name?" Rachel Kim." "Well, Rachel Kim, you're going to save lives. I can tell. You've got the mindset for it." "How can you tell?" "Because you're here. Because you chose this. That's always the first step." That evening, Maya drove to Ashford General Hospital, where Garrett was completing his final follow-up appointment. She waited in the lobby, watching people come and go, families visiting patients, medical staff changing shifts, the constant flow of human crisis and recovery. Garrett appeared from the elevators, moving easily now, only the faintest hesitation in his gait betraying that he'd been shot. He saw Maya, and his face broke into a genuine smile. "Clean bill of health, cleared for full duty in 6 weeks." "That's good. Your team will be glad to have you back." They walked out together into the parking lot, the sun setting over Ashford City in shades of orange and gold. "I heard about your training program," Garrett said. 20 students graduated last week, all certified in advanced trauma care. 20 people who know what to do when someone's dying. 20 people who won't freeze." Maya looked at him. "It's not combat medicine. It's not even emergency room nursing, but it matters. It matters more than you know. You're creating a network of people who can respond effectively in crisis. That ripples out. Those 20 people will each save lives. Some of the people they save will become first responders themselves. The chain continues." They reached Maya's car. She turned to face him fully. "I wanted to thank you for everything, the lawyers, the protection, the ceremony. I know I said it before, but you don't owe me thanks. You gave me my life. Everything else is just reciprocity." "Still, you didn't have to do any of it." Garrett's expression turned serious. "Yes, I did. Because letting good people get destroyed for doing the right thing, that's how evil wins. By making courage too expensive, by punishing people for caring, by grinding down anyone who stands up until everyone learns to stay down." Maya thought about Patricia Reeves, about the years she'd operated unchecked because no one had been willing to pay the price of stopping her, about how many nurses had been silenced before Maya refused to be quiet. "Do you think it's over?" she asked. "Really over?" "The immediate threat? Yes. Volkov's network is dismantled. Patricia Reeves is facing justice. The people who tried to silence you have been exposed." Garrett paused. "But the bigger fight, the one against systems that prioritize power over people, that's never over. It just takes different forms. Then I guess I'd better get used to fighting. You already are. Every time you teach someone to save a life, you're fighting. Every time you refuse to accept injustice, you're fighting. You don't need a battlefield to be a warrior, Maya. You just need to keep being exactly what you are. They said their goodbyes, and Maya drove home through the city streets she knew so well. The apartment she'd returned to after the safe house had been thoroughly cleaned and secured. It felt different now, not violated, but changed. Like everything else in her life. She made dinner and ate while reading Chen's latest update on the class action lawsuit. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Justice was slow but thorough. Her phone buzzed. An email from the Department of Defense. Her security clearance had been reactivated. They were offering her a position as a civilian contractor providing medical training to special operations units. Maya read the offer twice, considering. It would mean travel, long hours, working with active military personnel in environments that reminded her of everything she'd left behind. It would also mean making a real difference, preparing people for the worst so they'd be ready when the worst arrived. She drafted a response accepting the position, then hesitated before sending it. Was she sure? Was she ready to step back into that world? Her eyes fell on the SEAL Team 5 Challenge coin displayed on her bookshelf next to the certificate from her first class of graduated students. Symbols of who she'd become. Not just a combat medic or a civilian nurse or a controversial figure, but someone who refused to let circumstances define her choices. She hit send. 6 months after Maya Torres saved Garrett Stone's life in a restaurant while people tried to pull her away, she stood on a stage in Washington, D.C., receiving a civilian commendation from the Secretary of Defense for her contributions to emergency medical training and her courage under extraordinary circumstances. The ceremony was covered by national news. The Secretary's speech praised not just her actions, but her refusal to be silenced afterward, her willingness to expose corruption, her commitment to ensuring others would be prepared when crisis struck. In the audience sat Jennifer Moss and the other nurses who'd testified against Patricia Reeves, Robert Chen, and Jessica Park, who'd helped bring the truth to light, Margaret Stone and her family, the members of SEAL Team 5 in full-dress uniform. And somewhere in a federal prison, Alexei Volkov watched the coverage on a television in a common area, and according to the guard who reported it later, he smiled. When Maya stepped to the microphone to give brief remarks, she looked out at the assembled crowd and thought about the restaurant floor, slick with blood. The manager telling her she was just a nurse, the moment she'd decided that being just a nurse was more than enough. "I'm not a hero," she began. "I'm a person who was trained to save lives and refused to stop doing that job when it became inconvenient for people in power. I'm a person who got angry when I saw injustice and decided anger without action was pointless." She paused, letting her words settle. We live in a world where doing the right thing often costs us, where speaking truth can destroy careers, where standing up makes you a target. And the people who benefit from that world count on the fact that most of us will decide the cost is too high. But I'm standing here today because I decided I could live with the cost of fighting back. I couldn't live with the cost of staying silent. And I'm not alone. Every person who testified in those hearings, every whistleblower who came forward, every nurse who refused to accept retaliation as normal, they made the same choice. Maya's voice strengthened. So if you're watching this and you're facing injustice, if you're being told to be quiet or smaller or more convenient, I want you to know something. The people trying to silence you are counting on your fear. They're counting on you believing you're alone. They're counting on you deciding it's not worth it. Prove them wrong. Speak up. Stand up. Find the others who are ready to stand with you. Because systemic change doesn't happen when one person is brave. It happens when enough people are brave that the system can't ignore us anymore. The applause was deafening, sustained, people rising to their feet in waves. After the ceremony, after the photographs and the congratulations and the interviews, Maya found herself alone for a moment in a hallway. She leaned against the wall and let herself breathe, let herself feel the magnitude of how far she'd come from that quiet nurse who just wanted a peaceful life. Garrett appeared from around a corner, still in his dress uniform, his posture parade ground perfect. "Hell of a speech," he said. "Hell of a journey." "It's not over. You know that, right? You've got a target on your back now. People who profit from broken systems don't forget. Maya straightened, met his eyes. Let them come. I'm not the same person who knelt on a restaurant floor anymore. I know what I'm capable of. I know I'm not alone. And I know that some fights are worth having even if you can't win them all. You might be surprised. You've already won more than you realize. Garrett extended his hand. It's been an honor, Maya Torres. Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for reminding all of us what courage looks like. She shook his hand firmly. Thank you for showing me I didn't have to face it alone. They parted ways, and Maya walked out of the building into the Washington, D.C. afternoon. The city hummed with power and politics, and 1,000 people fighting 1,000 battles. She was just one of them now, just another person who'd decided that standing up mattered more than staying safe. Just a nurse who'd refused to let someone die. Just a woman who'd fought back when they tried to destroy her for it. Just Maya Torres. And that was enough. More than enough. As she got into the car that would take her to the airport, back to Ashford City, back to her students who were waiting to learn how to save lives, Maya Torres smiled. The manager who'd called her just a nurse was right, in a way. She was just a nurse. And just a nurse had brought down an empire of corruption, survived assassination attempts, exposed systemic injustice, and created a legacy of trained lifesavers who'd go on to rescue hundreds more. Just a nurse had proven that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they refused to accept that injustice was inevitable. Just a nurse had changed everything. Maya looked at the challenge coin she kept in her pocket, the weight of it solid and real. A reminder that when you save one life, you join a family that never forgets. That when you choose courage once, it gets easier every time after. That standing up doesn't require superpowers or special circumstances. It just requires the decision that silence is more expensive than speaking. And Maya Torres had already paid that price. Now she was reaping the rewards, not in money or fame or recognition, though those had come, in the knowledge that she'd faced the worst and survived, in the certainty that she'd done the right thing even when the right thing nearly destroyed her, in the peace that came from knowing she could look at herself in the mirror without shame or regret. That was worth more than any commendation. That was justice. And as the car pulled away from the ceremony, carrying her toward whatever came next, Maya Torres knew with absolute certainty that she'd do it all again. Every choice, every risk, every moment of standing when they told her to kneel, because some things were worth fighting for, and she was one of them. The end.